ESPN, WENJ HD Millville, Atlantic City, a Town Square media station. This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN. Now, live inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, here's Mike Gill.
Live on a Wednesday edition of the Sports Bash here on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. And don't forget, live video streaming of the show. Just search 973 ESPN on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. What's going on, everybody? I'm your host, Mike Gill. Josh Henning is producing today's show. You out there. Now, this is typically like the slowest day in sports, but we have NBA Finals Game 3 tonight, the day after the Major League Baseball All-Star Game, which was, it was okay last night. JT Realmuto did something in the game that no Philly player had done since 1981. And Zach Wheeler performed for all of about 45 seconds. American League wins. Shohei Ohtani is your MVP. The uniforms were atrocious. I hope not one person bought one of those jerseys so they could say, okay, we tried to get you to buy stuff and that didn't work. Let's go back to the way it was. And here's my recommendation. If you want to keep the awful uniforms, now I'm sure they would change every single year, like everyone would put their touch on it wherever you go. But if you're going to change the way the All-Star Game uniforms are, you can change the whole thing of having to have a player represent it. Because part of the whole charm of the All-Star Game is, hey, there's my guy. There's my guy wearing the Phillies uniform. There's my guy wearing the Cincinnati Reds uniform. We're in last place. There's my guy right there. There's my Pirate. There's my one guy, my Royal, my Tiger. Well, if he's not going to wear the uniform, then you don't need to have a guy represented from every team. You can get that rule out. So why I don't care that every player or team is represented, there's some charm to that, I guess. The uniforms have to go. You can't keep wearing those things. They were horrible. It was an embarrassment. They looked like they were wearing pajamas last night, the American League team, with those blue uniforms on. Any baseball team that wears a uniform that their pants are a color other than white or gray is a fraudulent squad. You can't wear a baseball pant that is any other color than white or gray. A blue baseball pant, that team gets no love. Can't wear a baseball pant that is any color other than the two. Come on. The American League All-Stars looked like a bunch of clown shows last night. And the National League wasn't much better. But an all-blue uniform is atrocious. That's the lead story of today's show. Forget the All-Star Game. The uniforms last night were embarrassing. They embarrassed themselves with those things last night. JT Realmuto, by the way, went yard last night, hit a home run. He's the first Philly to do it since Mike Schmidt, and the fifth Philly all together to hit a home run in the All-Star Game. Can anybody name the other four? Actually, I gave you one. So it's JT Realmuto. It's Michael Jack Schmidt. Can you name the other three Phillies to hit a home run in the MLB All-Star Game? One of them, Mike Schmidt, the last time to do it, 1981. That's how long it's been since a Philadelphia baseball player hit the ball over the fence in the Midsummer Classic. So it's Mike Schmidt, JT Realmuto, and three other guys. Anybody know? Bueller, anyone? Anyone know? 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. Let me know. Send me a text. That'll be fun to see if anybody can get the answer to that question. Who are the other guys to hit a home run? Josh, you said Dick Allen. That is one of them. Okay. So I gave the listeners one. There's two others. All right? There's two other guys, Schmidt, Dick Allen, JT Realmuto, and two guys. And one of them, all right, this is a hint. One of the home runs that was hit by a Philly won the game in extra innings, the home run. I mean, that's like, okay. Now, you're all Mr. Historian over there. When I gave you that clue, you should know that. I mean, that one there is, all right, that's a famous home run. A famous Phillies All-Star Game home run. By the way, Realmuto hit a home run in the fifth last night off of Detroit pitcher Gregory Soto. Now, Gregory Soto, I'm sure, is a fine pitcher, but something tells me if he didn't play for the Tigers, he's not in this game. So, therefore, with that uniform he had on last night, no one will ever remember that Greg Soto played for the Tigers. You see the problem here, Major League Baseball? You took a great thought and you just ruined it. You ever see the Curb Your Enthusiasm episode where Ted Danson gets the sweater from Larry, and Larry gets him the sweater and has a hole in it, and he says, Larry, you gave me the sweater, but it has a hole in it. Yeah, well, you need to take it back now. I gave the sweater to you. And Ted Danson's like, well, now I don't want it. You gave me a sweater that has a hole in it. I don't want the sweater. Well, what do you mean you don't want the sweater? I gave you the sweater. It's a gift. You know what, Larry? You took a nice thought and you just ruined it. That was the All-Star game last night. You took a nice thought to have these uniforms that would be different, and you just ruined it with those things. They were horrible. And poor Greg Soto gives up a bomb. Well, actually, not poor Greg Soto. Greg Soto gives up a homer, and no one will ever know that Greg Soto was the guy that gave up the home run because he was pitching in pajamas last night. Realmuto made the game 4-1, but the American League would go on to add another run in the sixth. They won the game 5-2. Realmuto ended the night 1 for 2 with a homer and a strikeout. Zach Wheeler made a brief appearance in the game, entering the Midsummer Classic in the top of the ninth. It was almost as if Dave Roberts forgot he was on his team and decided, I better get this guy in here. Go on out there. He threw 3 pitches, all strikes, and recorded a strikeout in the top of the ninth. Now, the question I have off of that is, after throwing just 3 pitches, one has to wonder if the Phillies would open the second half of the series season on Friday night with Wheeler against the Marlins. Or did those 3 pitches tire him out so much that the Phillies can't use him now on Friday night? Do we have a scheduled pitcher in the game on Friday night? Because these are the things, like he threw 3 pitches in the game. No, the Phillies do not have a pitcher scheduled that I see anyway. Alcantara is the Marlins starter. They have their starter listed, but the Phillies do not. Like, throwing 3 pitches should not prevent you from having the ability to throw in the game on Friday. 3 pitches, for God's sakes. By the way, Chris from Rio Grande, it's Greg Luzinski and Johnny Callison who hit the home run to win the All-Star game. It's those are the 2 other home runs that were hit by Phillies. Greg Luzinski and the great Johnny Callison, who was an All-Star for 3 seasons with the Phillies, right? And he was named MVP in the 1964 All-Star game, in which he hits the home run to win the game in extra innings. He pinch hit late in the game, and he wins it. So there's your Phillies hitting home runs in an All-Star game. A couple more texts. Schmidt, Luzinski, Dick Allen, Johnny Callison. So our listeners have got that right. It's not a bad job. You should be really happy for these people. You're Mr. If you don't know your history, and then you're the guy who didn't know your history, and these guys got it. Right? Michael Mason tweets at Mike Gill Show. If I'm Wheeler, I'm ticked off. One of the best pitchers in the game, and he only gets to throw 3 damn pitches. Brutal job by the coaches. Wonder why players don't want to go. It's almost a complete waste of their, I think you wanted to say time being the operative word here. Time. If I'm Wheeler, I don't care. Look, I get it. People are like, what disrespect. It's the All-Star game. I'm almost hoping I don't pitch. I'd rather pitch on Friday night against the Marlins. I don't want to be prevented from helping my team win on Friday night because I threw 2 frames in the All-Star game. If I'm the Phillies, I'm saying, thank God Wheeler didn't pitch. I can use him now on Friday and bring him back against the Yankees when they play them at Yankee Stadium next week. Am I personally ticked off that, hey, I didn't get a chance to showcase who I am and what kind of season I'm having? Yeah, I think Wheeler should have started the game. That's where I would have been ticked. Not that I didn't get in the game. Hey, if you didn't have a clue enough to start me, then don't even use me. Wheeler's having a better season than Scherzer is, and yet Scherzer somehow got the ball to start the game over Wheeler. But Michael Mason, I appreciate your tweet at Mike Gill Show. Follow me there. I'm not ticked off. I'm saying thank you for not using me. Now I'll pitch on Friday and shove it right up your rear end there, Marlins. He is one of the best pitchers in the game. We got a lot to discuss today. 609-403-0973. Look, the All-Star game to me has become a watered-down spectacle that is still great for the fans. Like, I remember it as a kid, and what excited me was, hey, there's Mike Schmidt, that Phillies uniform. When he got to put on the Phillies uniform, and you would see, hey, there's Mike Schmidt. He's playing on television. Like, now games are on TV all the time. It wasn't like you had Sunday Night Baseball and games on all the time. Your guy was on TV. Now, you saw the Phillies all the time, but it was almost like, wow, my guy's playing with players from other teams. This is amazing. He's got a Phillies uniform on. Like, that was different. You know, now being older, the fact that your guy is playing with other players in his uniform isn't the same wow factor, but the game's not for me. It's for an 8-year-old kid. And baseball has taken that because they're idiots. You heard Bob Wischusen was in for Barton Hahn today, and he's talking about how they got to take the shift out because of the entertainment factor. He's not wrong. Like, I'm kind of torn on that whole situation. The game is supposed to be for kids and entertaining for adults, and somebody came up with this defensive alignment to take the fun out of the game. Is baseball supposed to step in and say, hey, I'm going to take this out? Well, he made some interesting points. Bob said, hey, in basketball, you can't goaltend. They want you to score. You can't just have Manute Bol standing in the middle of the paint and just fly swatting shots away so that no one can get an outside shot. I mean, Joel Embiid, if you took a three, he would stand there and catch it. So they had goaltending. So I get that aspect of what he's saying. But in football, you have decided to come up with plays that are run-stopping plays. Do you say on 3rd down and 1, you can't put 11 guys across the line of scrimmage? No, of course you don't. So there is a fine line to me of, hey, somebody came up with this competitive edge. I don't like the shift personally, but I also think it's almost not fair or shouldn't just be outlawed. I don't know. I think there's a way around it that we need to try to find a happy medium maybe. But baseball, they have their own issues. They got a lot of stuff. But I think what you saw last night and what you're seeing is kind of a change in the game and kind of the change in the stars. Like we talked about this about 2 weeks ago, I think. Bryce Harper used to be the star. Bryce Harper was the biggest star in baseball. He's not even in the All-Star game now. Bryce Harper is like an afterthought when it comes to the pantheon of baseball stars. He can't even crack. Like, I know yesterday we were talking about Jesse Winker. Jesse Winker's numbers are dwarfing Bryce Harper. I don't say dwarfing's not fair, but he's got numbers that are better than Bryce Harper's. There are many guys who played in that game last night that many of you and me, quite frankly, don't recognize as everyday household names. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but they were on display last night. You know, you have, as I mentioned, Jesse Winker played left field last night. If I said, give me Jesse Winker's numbers, you'd be like, I never even heard of the guy. Guy's hitting 300 with 19 homers. It's a better year than Bryce Harper's having. Bryce Harper, that crew of guys, that crew of stars, they are getting phased out, and the new guys are getting phased in. And the question is, you, me, others who grew up with those guys. Look, I'm 44, and I watched Bryce Harper at 19 years old. But this new crew of guys, Fernando Tatis, Vlad Guerrero Jr., Bo Bichette, guys that you maybe aren't as familiar with, Juan Soto, maybe the younger guys, this game is all they know. Maybe they like it. Maybe they like the shift. Who knows? It's all they know. Most young kids, all they know is the shift. Do they like it? I mean, it's kind of bizarre to say, yeah, I really like this shift thing. It's taking away all the hits. Text message board. I don't like this one at all. You know the way around the shift, hit the ball to left. You ever try to hit the ball to the opposite field when the pitcher is throwing 98 miles an hour on your hands? I got news for you, dude. You ain't doing it. Anybody who says hit the ball the other way against the shift has never held a bat in their hand with anybody throwing with any velocity in their life. All right? I get it. Hit the ball the other way. I love it when someone hits the ball the other way. All right? When the ball is pitched outside, hit it the other way. Not when it's blistering your hands. They shift for a reason. They don't just shift in non-unison. You understand that, right? They shift, and then they tell the pitcher and the catcher, we are shifting. Do not throw the ball on the outside part of the plate so that the left-handed hitter can then drive one to left field. I get that all the time. Just hit the ball the other way. You ever try to hit the ball the other way when the guy throws 100 miles an hour, 92 miles an hour? All right, forget it. Forget 98. Try to get a 92-mile-per-hour fastball when it's thrown on the inside part of the plate. These guys aren't missing, all right? They're not missing their spots. I love this text. You know the way to hit the ball, and he puts it in capital letters. Hit the ball to left. Yeah, hit the ball to left. If the pitcher throws the ball on the outside half of the plate, then yes, I can step into the ball and drive it to left field. Right? Terry of Galloway says they're professional baseball players, my guy. Come on, dude. Yeah, and they're facing professional pitchers. Hey, Terry, do me a favor. I would like you to grab a bat, okay? And I'm not even asking you to face a 92-mile-per-hour bat. I want you to face a 13-year-old kid, okay? I have a 13-year-old kid that pitches for my team. He throws probably 75. And I want you, Terry of Galloway, to try to hit the ball wherever you want it, right? I'm not asking you to hit a professional. I'm asking you to hit a 13-year-old. And I want to see if you can hit the ball the opposite field when you feel like it. And I got news for you, Terry. You're not going to do it. Because if the ball is pitched on your hands, you are not driving that ball to the opposite field. And the pitcher who has a defense shifting knows not to throw the ball in the outside part of the plate. And quite frankly, as many people have discussed on this very show, but others, they want the power hitters who they shift for. Bryce Harper, any left-handed power bat that they're shifting for. They want you to try to hit the ball the opposite way because now you're not hitting it over the fence. You're just hitting a measly little single, and they'll give that up. Like, people, you have to understand that, right? You do understand that. Baseball today is all about homers and doubles. If you're just going to hit a single the other way, they'll give you that single the other way all the time. Hey, Mike, you used football as an example to use the shift, but what about on offense in football when they get illegal formation or illegal shift flags? Yeah, offense, I'm saying there are rules in basketball. There are rules in football. There are rules in all the sports that have evolved the game. So, yeah, baseball has to determine whether or not they just want to say, we appreciate that you came up with this defensive alignment, but we're not going to let you do it anymore. And that's one of the things that Bob Wischusen was bringing up. 609-403-0973. I'm not talking about a wiffle ball, Terry. No, there's no wiffle ball here. I'm talking about you try to hit a mediocre fastball and you put it wherever you want. I want to see how easy it is for you. Because you said in bold capital letters, just hit the ball to left. And that's not going to happen. It might happen once. It might happen every now and then. But not every time you come to the plate. It's not so simple to be like, you know what? They're shifting. I'm just going to hit the ball to left field. Stick to golf, dude. That's what I would tell you. Stick to golf, Terry. Sports Bash is brought to you by Matt Blatt Nissan. The all-new Matt Blatt Nissan, open on the Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township, next to Home Depot. Visit them online at mattblattnissan.com. I always enjoy that. Why don't they just hit the ball the other way? You ever try to hit the ball the other way when the ball is in on your hands? Yeah. Tell me how the sting of your hand feels when you get a 98-mile-per-hour fastball in your knuckles. Yeah, just drive it the other way. Why don't you do that? Yeah, let's see how you do it there, pal. That's like Vince Velasquez the other night. He went up to the guy who told him he sucked. He said, let me see your fat ass go out there and try to get people out. You see that? I don't know the body type of Terry from Galloway. I don't care if he's 120 pounds or 320 pounds. You ain't hitting the ball where you want to when a 95-mile-per-hour fastball is blazing on your hands. They don't just put the shift on with them anticipating you throwing the ball on the outside part of the plate. That's a fail. But you provided great humor for me today, Terry, and I needed that because today's Sports Bash, I'm imagining when I have the latest news on Ben Simmons, which is coming up next, you guys are going to get fired up one way or the other. Stick around for that. All right, we got a lot of reaction coming in on the video stream. We'll get to those comments. A lot to dive into on today's show. I'll get to the latest news on Ben Simmons. Apparently the Kings are interested and have a couple players they want to give the Philadelphia 76ers. I'm not so sure the Sixers are interested in those players, but we'll have that coming up in just a second. 609-403-0973. Adam is watching on Facebook. He says, the shift in the All-Star game is dumb. The uniforms were bad. Joe Buck in these guys' ear while trying to hit is annoying. I know a lot of people that like the mic'd up aspect of it. I don't have a problem with that. It kind of humanizes the players a little bit. The uniforms were terrible. The shift in the All-Star game, I mean, when the game mattered, maybe. I kind of agree, Adam, that the shift in the All-Star game is not really necessary. Chris Lefferts says, people think baseball is just that easy. Man, you have less than a second to react to that pitch. Yeah, it is not that easy. You are not hitting the ball the other way when you feel like it. You are hitting the ball the other way because the pitcher pitches it in a spot that allows you to hit it in the other direction, not because you want to or because the way the defense is playing you. The only way you're really hitting that ball the other way is if the pitcher makes a mistake. If he leaves a ball out on the outside half of the plate, then yeah, you could drive that ball to left field, and you should drive that ball to left field. You know, we have a drill with our team. We literally throw the ball on the outer half of the plate, and if you don't hit the ball to right field, if you're a right-handed batter, you get one swing and the next guy comes up. Get out of there. You can't hit the ball to right field when we throw the ball on the outer half of the plate. Get out and bring the next guy up. At that time there, yes, we want you to hit the ball there, and we're throwing a pitch for you that is designed for you to hit it there. But other than that, you're not hitting the ball the opposite way unless I throw a pitch to make you hit the ball to the opposite way. Jeff is watching. He says, 13 years old and he's throwing faster than the speed limit. I know hit the other way. Sheesh, it's like, can you even hit it? Yeah, some of these 13-year-olds can pump some heat up there, man. 75 is pretty good. I mean, I might be maybe on his hardest 75, you know, not consistently maybe. I don't know, maybe everybody's guns are a little hot these days. It's always a little fun to add a couple MPHs on your on the gun, but whatever. 75, 73, 72. I got news for you. 72, you're not hitting the other way if you don't know what you're doing. Right? 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Look, I want to get into more Phillies a little bit later in the show. And part of it is, you know, ESPN gave out their first half grades. I think this one's kind of interesting. Also, the fact of the matter is Phillies play Friday, so they have a couple days off here. We'll dive back into the second half preview with Bob Wankel on Friday. But I want to get into this story that came out earlier today, and you can read more about it at 973ESPN.com, which is Ben Simmons. Now, we told you yesterday, 5 teams said to have interest in Ben Simmons. 5. One of those teams is the Kings. And according to a report in the Sacramento Bee, it's a great name for the paper, the Sacramento Bee. Well, newspapers are not doing well, if you haven't noticed, for them to still be around and like still have like the old school name, like the Bee. You know, yeah, it's kind of cool, the Sacramento Bee. Hey, did you read the Bee today? Somebody said to me the other day, they were reading something in the paper. Did I read something in the paper? And I said, look, I'm not anti-paper. I wish I still got the paper and went through the whole paper thing. I used to read the paper all the time. And I was like, dude, I got to be honest with you. I don't even know. Like, I can't tell you the last time I saw a newspaper. Like, I read it online and all that stuff, but and I appreciate what those guys do, obviously. But the Sacramento Bee is like, you know, still strong. It's a strong name. But there's been no shortage of speculation when it comes to Ben Simmons. Yesterday, Mark Stein reported that at least 5 known teams already have interest in the 3-time All-Star. One of those teams is the Sacramento Kings. So what would the Sixers and Daryl Morey be looking to receive from the Kings if they were to move Simmons? According to the Sacramento Bee, a lot. Now, the Kings are looking for ways to improve their defense that finished 30th in the NBA defensive rating, and they see adding Simmons, who, by the way, is an NBA all-defensive first-team player and the runner-up for Defensive Player of the Year, as a way to spearhead that transformation. So what would the Kings be willing to part with? Well, according to the Sacramento Bee, Sacramento would probably be willing to offer a package that, quote, includes Buddy Hield, Marvin Bagley III, and 1 or more future first-round picks. One league source recently told the Sacramento Bee that the Kings would have to send a minimum of 3 first-round picks to the Sixers in a trade that would include Buddy Hield and Marvin Bagley. So let's start with that. Buddy Hield, Marvin Bagley, and 3 first-round picks for Ben Simmons. I don't even like that trade. And I think there's people out there that are like, I'd do that trade right now. And you don't think Ben Simmons has any value? 3 first-round picks, Buddy Hield, who's a 40% three-point shooter, and the former number 2 overall pick in the draft? Now, Bagley's been disappointing. I was a big Bagley fan coming out of college, but he's been hurt constantly. Could a change of scenery help Bagley? Possible. But that's 1. 2. However, per the report, the Sixers aren't interested in those 2 players, and they have their eyes on bigger fish. All-star point, or excuse me, I shouldn't say all-star. He has not made an all-star game. But the Sixers want Kings star point guard De'Aaron Fox in any deal involving Simmons, but Sacramento doesn't seem interested in that. Quote, another source said the Sixers wouldn't be interested unless Fox or Halliburton is in the deal. But Hield's elite three-point shooting and Bagley's unrealized potential could be appealing if a better deal doesn't materialize. I got news for you. Not only will a better deal materialize, this is going to be like Monty Hall. They're going to have door number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 to choose from. I told you yesterday, it's not about Ben Simmons, the player. It's about the business. Mike McGarry is going to join me in about 5 minutes. We've argued for years about the process and whether it worked and yada, yada. And I said, for fans, it's about winning a championship. The Sixers are a business, and the process caused business to boom. And now other teams, did you notice the teams that are interested in Ben Simmons? What do they all have in common? Indiana, Sacramento, Minnesota, Cleveland, Toronto. None of them can attract a free agent. And unless they tank, they ain't getting a player to go there. How can they get one? Daryl Morey. Can Ben Simmons come play for us? They're going to have offers to choose from, multiple offers to choose from. This isn't a basketball decision, just like the process. It's a business decision. And business for the Sixers has been booming, and other teams see it, and now they want a part of it. That's why Ben Simmons is going to have offers galore. Does Mike McGarry agree? I know he doesn't like the process, but guess what? Indiana, Cleveland, Minnesota, Sacramento, Toronto, they all want a part of it. His name's Ben Simmons. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. We'll talk about that coming up on the other side. Brought to you by East Coast Roofing, Siding, and Windows, serving all of South Jersey. If you call, they'll show up online, eastcoastroofing.com. Plus, the Phillies at the All-Star break. And as we told you over at 97.3 ESPN.com, and Mike can talk a little bit more about this, South Jersey baseball really booming. 5 more area players drafted adding to the already big amount of players that are playing minor league or even professional ball. Read more about it at 973ESPN.com. All right, 2:42 here on a Wednesday. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City is back. We got a lot to discuss. Michael, what's going on, my man, as we take a look at usually the quietest day on the sports calendar. We at least have an NBA Finals game tonight. How are you, man?
Right. Like this is a day you're usually lost when it comes to sports. And I woke up this morning and said, what's there to watch tonight? And I'm like, oh, there's an NBA playoff game on at 9:00 tonight. So it's unusual, basically.
Now, were you into the Midsummer Classic, or are you beyond that?
I had it on in the background. I always watch it. I'm still a sucker for the introductions. I like the introduction. I almost like the pomp and circumstance that surrounds the game rather than the game itself. So I had the game on in the background while I was doing some things around the house, and had one eye on it most of the night, basically.
Yay or nay on the All-Star Game unis?
Well, I didn't get too caught up. I'll tell you what bothered me about the uniforms, and I think this is where it kind of hurt baseball a little bit. I thought it hurt as far as recognizing who some of the players were. I give you an example, like Adam Frazier of the Pirates, right? He's an all-star. I couldn't really pick him out of a lineup, but I knew he was an all-star. So if I saw him show up in the Pirate uniform, I'd be like, hey, that must be Adam Frazier. Instead, I see a guy walk up to the plate in a white uniform. I'm like, is that a Pirate logo on his jersey? What's going on here? Who is this? So that's why that was my one complaint about the uniforms. I'm not a traditionalist here or there, but I think, it helps you recognize who the players are because you don't recognize facially all 60 guys, basically.
Yeah, no, I said if you're going to not make them wear their actual uniforms, then you can get rid of one guy from being represented from every team, because that's the charm of the game is, hey, there's my Tiger player. He gave a home run for JT Realmuto.
Right, like Seinfeld says, right, we're the laundry, and they took the laundry out of the game, basically. So there you go,
Now, are you a Curb guy as well?
I'm a big Curb guy, yes.
Yeah, the episode where Larry gives Ted Danson the sweater with the hole in it. He's like, Larry, you took a good thought. You just ruined it.
Right, exactly.
That's the whole thing is you took a good thought of coming up with all-star jerseys, but you just ruined the whole thing. Those things look like pajamas last night.
Yeah, they were kind of a throwback. That's the other thing. I thought they were a throwback to like the uniforms we used to see in the 1970s when the Chicago White Sox showed up in shorts one day or something like that. They were kind of throwback to these softball, keg at every base sort of uniforms that you saw in, Houston Astros of the 1970s, basically. So, I don't usually get all upset about it. I thought the big factor was it just hurt, hurt identifying the players. And I do think the fans like to see, hey, there's Zach Wheeler wearing a Phillies, red and white pinstripes out there. It sort of took that out of the game, basically.
All right, Mike, for years, you and I have battled via social media on the merits of the process. Here we are in 2021. It's still kind of lingering. And one of the main pieces, Ben Simmons' name is coming up everywhere. Reported yesterday that 5 teams are known to have interest. Now, today, one of those teams, the Kings, apparently the Sixers want a load from them if they are to make a trade. One suggested Buddy Hield, Marvin Bagley, and 3 first-round picks. And apparently the Sixers are not interested in those players. They want De'Aaron Fox in any deal with Sacramento. So a Fox-Simmons swap. What say you?
I have to say no to that. Again, if I'm the Sixers, I am looking for a more established player who has succeeded in clutch situations that the Sixers have not succeeded in themselves. De'Aaron Fox has played for Sacramento, which basically means he hasn't played a meaningful basketball game in his NBA life, okay? So now we're going to give the ball. We're going to trade Ben Simmons, and we're going to give the ball to De'Aaron Fox in Game 7 against the Miami Heat, against Atlanta, against Milwaukee next year, and he's going to get us home. I don't believe that for a second. So therefore, I'd rather keep Ben Simmons and take my chances with Ben Simmons in the 2022 playoffs than take a flyer on Fox, or even Halliburton is a player with a lot of potential. But I think the Sixers need an established star. I think they have to be able to walk up to Joel Embiid and say, here is a guy who is going to help you win an NBA championship. I don't think De'Aaron Fox or Halliburton, for that matter, or Hield or Bagley does that.
Yeah, the Buddy Hield Bagley one is more like, hey, see, Buddy Hield to me is like kind of usurping Curry. Like, aren't they kind of similar?
Yeah, I mean, to me, Buddy Hield is, a younger version of Danny Green. I mean, what are you doing? He's such a shooter. Yeah, we understand that they're going to have to surround Embiid with some shooters. But those guys are going to come to the team naturally because they're going to want to play on a team that wants to win an NBA championship. So what you need is a guy who can create scoring opportunities for himself and teammates in Game 7 of an NBA playoff series in the fourth quarter. They don't have that guy on the roster. Buddy Hield is not that guy. I'm not trading Ben Simmons until I get that guy back.
All right. So yesterday there was the report that essentially said the Sixers have opened up trade conversations. So now it becomes this cat and mouse game of where did that leak from? Is this the Sixers saying we're open for business? When they essentially now say, hey, they're interested. So do we now think the Sixers are willing and fielding offers, but also making calls?
Well, I think they have to be, right? I think it's a smart, and I heard you talking before, I think it's a smart basketball move. And if you want to take it into the business side move, I think it's a smart business side move. Because if you run this team back for the Sixers.
Okay.
Because
clarify.
If you run this team back next year and you talk about being relevant and things like that, the Sixers aren't going to play a relevant NBA game next season if they bring Simmons back until the second round of the 2022 playoffs. Nobody is going to believe any success they have in the regular season. Nobody is going to believe anything's changed. How are you going to get excited about 50 wins in the regular season if you know they have this stumbling block in the playoffs and if you know they haven't done anything to address it? So if they do trade Simmons, okay, then you create some excitement around the regular season also because you're going to say, hey, how does player A, let's just say it's Damian Lillard, how does Damian Lillard fit in with Joel Embiid? How is their chemistry working? Are they working well together? Then you create some relevance to the regular season. If they bring Simmons back, they're going to be a good team. They're going to win 50 games and they're going to win the first round of the NBA playoffs. They're going to get to the second round of the NBA playoffs, and that's when people will start to pay attention because that's the question that they've got to answer.
The article over at The Athletic suggested interest across the league in Simmons remains robust. Now, Mark Stein mentioned 5 teams, and I feel that those 5 teams all have something in common, Mike. They are 5 smaller market teams that can't get a superstar player unless they're awful, right? They can't get a free agent to go there unless they draft a guy. This is a way for one of these teams to get a player that they can no other way get their hands on. That's why I think Simmons is going to have more value than people think.
Oh, from the start, if you remember, I've always said on here, I always thought people who said his trade value was low or you couldn't trade him now, I always thought those people were crazy. I agree. I think there's more than those 5 teams out there because Ben Simmons is a player. He's a number 1 draft pick. He's an all-NBA defensive player. He's been an NBA All-Star. And like you said, you can't get those players on the open market normally. It's hard to draft them. I heard you mention Minnesota before. Minnesota's been allegedly tanking for years. They seem to always have the number 1, 2, or number 3 pick, but they always miss on those guys. Wiggins, Towns has been okay. They bring Butler in. They can't keep Butler. They can't get things going there. It's hard to get a player like Ben Simmons. And I still think, again, being forced into the position of defending Ben Simmons, I think Ben Simmons on the right team is a valuable guy who can help you win in the NBA. He just can't do it with Embiid in Philadelphia. It's just a bad mix. If you put Simmons on a team, make him a small ball center and surround him with 4 shooters, then you can hide him in the dunker spot in the fourth quarter and it'll be okay. But when you're trying to post Embiid and hide Simmons, it doesn't work.
It's interesting. Like, what do you make of all these analytics that say they are the best duo, offensive efficiency when they're together, they're the best? Because you can make a strong argument, Mike, that if Ben Simmons was regular season Ben Simmons and not this guy who shot 36% and decided not to shoot for a couple of games in the playoffs, they would have swept that Hawks team.
Well, you said the key words right there. Regular season, okay? There's a huge difference between the regular season and the postseason. Ben Simmons in the regular season, the Sixers run it back next year with Ben Simmons. They're 50 wins. They're top 2, top 3 seed in the NBA. What we have seen, we saw it against Toronto. We saw it against Atlanta. It does not work in the playoffs. So if you want to bring Ben Simmons back and continue to be eliminated in the first and second round of the NBA playoffs, feel free. But it does not work in game sevens of NBA playoffs. And those are the games you have to win to get to a championship, or for the Phillies to get, Sixers to get to that next level. So Ben Simmons, tell me all the stats you want. They're great. I'm a big believer in analytics, but I'm also a big believer in my eyes. The analytics tell me it works during the regular season. My eyes tell me that it doesn't work in the playoffs, and the stats also tell me that it doesn't work in the fourth quarter of playoffs.
You're right about this, Mike. I'm not going to push you on this too much, but his past playoff years, he did not shoot 36% from the free throw line.
Well, but he did, and I've run the stats off. I've said it several times. Look at his fourth quarters against Toronto in that 7-game series, and look at his fourth quarters against Atlanta, and he's just a non-factor. And this year, he had to be pulled from the game. So you can't have a guy who's supposedly your number 2 player being pulled from the game with 3 minutes to go, and you're involved in a one-possession game. You can't have it, and that's what happens in Philadelphia, and that's why he has to go.
Mike, we'll close out with this. You wrote about Chase Petty and how the Twins fell for him. The whole area, you got more guys drafted. There's so many guys in the minors. We kind of hit on this a few times, but with Petty being drafted in the first round, the Bishop Yusuf kid, Salamento in the second round, others the last couple of days. How big is baseball booming in this area?
Yeah, it's really unbelievable. We had Josh Hood, a former press player of the year from, I think, 2016 or 17, a St. Augustine graduate, a Vineland resident. He was drafted by the Red Sox in the 20th round, so he's the latest player from the Cape Atlantic League to go. And again, I said in the early 1990s, baseball, it was a barren wasteland. It was freezing out down by the shore. Nobody, there were some good players. But now, I don't know what's happened. Call it the Mike Trout effect from 2009. I'm sure Chase Petty will give it another boost here. Baseball is booming. We have more players in major league organizations playing professional baseball than we do in any other sport, and it's not even close, and it's showing no signs of slowing down. It's just baseball has just become this area's top sport, and from where it was 20 years ago, it's really a remarkable transformation.
Read Mike's article on Petty and his 100-mile-per-hour fastball heading to Minnesota over at AC Press McGarry on Twitter or pressofatlanticcity.com. Mike, all right, pal. I'll talk to you later.
We'll see you down the road. Thanks.
All right, that's Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. Kind enough, of course, to join us here on the Wednesday show. Good back and forth, good conversation. The one thing I will say in terms of the Simmons trade, I'm wondering if the Sixers' best chance for a deal is more of a business decision or a basketball decision for the other team. In other words, does Indiana make the trade because they want business, they want seats filled, they want jerseys sold, because basketball is business more so than it is sport? Back with more.
Here's Mike Gill.
All right, Wednesday afternoon. The Major League Baseball All-Star Game last night, that's in the books. We've got the NBA Finals tonight. I like this new schedule. The NBA should stick with it. They can own a night. This should be high ratings tonight. Most people say there's never anything on. It's the only thing on tonight. It's the NBA Finals. We have it on 97.3 ESPN. Jason Fitz, Spain and Fitz, and he joins me right now. What are the chances? We were just talking about him, and he joins me here on the show. Jay Fitz, what's up, man?
Man, living that dream. And you're not wrong, by the way. It used to be the answer to a trivia question every year. The one day without any major sport on it was the day after the Major League Baseball All-Star Game. That was a fun trivia. You could win trivia contests. So for the NBA to put it on tonight, I think makes brilliant sense. There's literally nothing else for us to talk about. There's nothing else for us to get excited about. There's nothing else to watch. I mean, it's a captivated audience. So smart planning by the NBA. And one of the little nuggets I think they'll keep.
I think this was actually ESPN's doing because they told Major League Baseball, you have Monday and Tuesday. They couldn't play the finals on those 2 days because the game was in Milwaukee Sunday. There's no travel day. They had 2 days off. So because of the All-Star game, this game's Wednesday, right?
Yeah, I mean, which makes good sense. I mean, if I ran a network, I'd do the same thing. You put a lot of cash into these things. Let's go.
Absolutely. No, and it's smart now. I don't know that basketball, though, is going to change the schedule enough that the finals are going to be pushed this far back to be able to constantly land on this day. That's the problem.
Well, I think my hope is that they're going to learn from all of this and realize that we're not paying a lot of attention until Christmas anyway. So the later they start the regular season, I'd rather see the playoffs and the championship go into July, frankly, and get more time with it. Like, this is the dead period in sports talk coming up after the finals anyway. So why not captivate the entire audience of sports fans by being the only thing on in that moment? It makes way more sense to me.
Or, now I don't know that you asked Joey Chestnut this when you talked to him at the hot dog eating competition. How frequently could he do that? Could you do like another one of those? Like, could they do another one like in a couple of weeks? Or is that like a one time a year capability?
No, he can get back at it in a couple of weeks. So, but he needs a little time to change his food. So if it's not hot dogs, if it's beignets or something, he'll need a couple of weeks to get his body ready for beignets. That was a workout program. Body by beignets. That's our new workout program.
Cool as a random food, just throw out. Like somebody would have said wings or donut. You went beignet. I like that. A real quick All-Star game. A fan of the pajama-esque uniforms or no?
No, I mean, not a huge fan of them, but I'm also not sure that I was the market for it, right? Like, if you're a jersey head, I think you love the fact that you get different options. And I know a lot of people say they like looking out and seeing the different uniforms from the different representation, but it's a little like Pro Bowl. Like, I personally would never buy a Pro Bowl jersey, but there are people that do, so they make those jerseys every year. So I didn't love it, but, I don't love a lot of the counter jerseys we've seen this year in general. Like, it's funny to me that Giants fans will look at it and say, oh, the San Francisco ones are awful, but the Boston ones aren't bad. And Boston fans are like, oh, the San Francisco ones aren't bad, but ours are terrible. Like, every purist thinks that the ones they're looking at are the worst.
I agree with that. Yeah, I hated them last night because you couldn't identify anybody. I don't know who any of these guys are. They're not wearing the Tigers uniform or your Pirates uniform or whatever. I thought it was a disservice to those guys who no one knew who they were anyway. All right, Jason Fitz, we got NBA Finals Game 4 tonight. Now, the Bucks have been down in every series. They have found a way to get back. They're much better at home. But now, playing at home, do we actually feel that they are ready to do what they've done? Get back, not only back in the series, but take over the series?
Yeah, I don't know that they'll take it over. But here's the thing. When you're relying on the other guys in every step of the way, which is what this series really is going to come down to, your other guys are more comfortable at home. That's what we've seen. Like, I want Middleton to be consistent and just that guy that can suddenly be in our dumb Batman and Robin conversations. I want that for Drew Holiday. I want a level of consistency, but throughout the entirety of the playoffs, we haven't gotten that. They're just not as good on the road. So to me, if you're banking on the other guys to step up and be the guy, that's easier to do at home. So the Deer District, the adrenaline that comes with all of that, I think it shocked Phoenix a little bit. I don't think it'll shock them in this game. I still think Milwaukee wins this, and we head back to Phoenix with a real series. But somebody at some point is going to have to shoot well on the road to steal a game. Otherwise, we are going to go 7.
All right, here locally, a lot of Ben Simmons stuff, obviously, and especially in the last 24 hours. Apparently, reports that there's at least 5 teams interested. The Sixers are asking for a big haul. The Sacramento Bee is reporting some of the names that the Sixers are asking for. De'Aaron Fox, one of them. But I would ask you this question. Is a Ben Simmons trade for the other team? The 5 teams were mentioned were Minnesota, Indiana, Cleveland, Sacramento, Toronto. They all have something in common. They can't attract a free agent, right? So is a Ben Simmons trade a basketball trade or a business trade?
Oh, it's a business trade, 100%. And essentially, if they trade him to any of those places you mentioned, they're trading him basically to go somewhere where he can work on improving his skill set outside the radar. Because think about every one of those teams you're mentioning. Like, we're not paying attention to most of them throughout the course of the regular season. So he can turn around, work on getting better, and all that team is going to do is then try and flip him for future assets. He becomes like one of those house shows on HGTV, that's got good bones, but we're not really sure if we like the kitchen, and we don't want to spend too much because then we're upside down on it. Like, that's Ben Simmons at this point. I don't think, frankly, any of the teams you mentioned, I don't think their fan base is going to be excited about the acquisition of Ben Simmons. So you better make sure that if you're acquiring him, you're selling whatever your long-term plan is on how you're going to use him, how you're going to make him better, and then what you intend to do to flip him somewhere else. Because it feels to me like once he's moved once, he's going to become one of those people that in 3 years we're talking about his 4th team, and now he's trying to be a contributor on a championship team.
Yeah, Jason Fitz, by the way, Good Bones is on HGTV. You're right. Flip or Flop is also a HGTV. Now, they were married. They got divorced. They put them back together, right?
I think so, which would ultimately be really weird. Like, already hard enough working with your wife. Now try working with your ex-wife. I mean,
yeah, and they both got remarried. I think she's already divorced again or something to that effect. But, all right, we got a little off track there. Let's get back. De'Aaron Fox, apparently the Kings don't want to move him. But if you're the Sixers, is that a good enough return for Ben Simmons?
De'Aaron Fox is more than I think the Sixers can get back. I mean, De'Aaron Fox is a nice player, by the way, and I'm not surprised Sacramento doesn't want to move him. I mean, what's the message to your fans and to your team in the locker room? Like, you're not getting better if the swap is De'Aaron Fox for Ben Simmons. Like, there are things that Ben Simmons does really well. I understand that. But De'Aaron Fox and fans of De'Aaron Fox are sitting there looking at him saying, hey, why can't he have, and this is what every fan base is going to say now, why can't he have the meteoric rise of Devin Booker, right? Like, that's what everybody's going to look at. If you're somebody that can score in spurts, we're going to look at it and say, well, he could be the next Booker. You just got to put the right pieces around him. That's an easier sales pitch with De'Aaron Fox than, hey, we're going to try and win with defense. Like, what fan base actually buys that anymore? So, for my money, if Philly can get De'Aaron Fox, do cartwheels up and down the street.
Yeah, the report yesterday from The Athletic suggested that the interest has been robust in Simmons. So I'm wondering if De'Aaron Fox is even the best offer that you can get.
That's going to be what's interesting to see what's really being offered. Because in my mind, the easiest thing to offer, and this is the reason I think like teams like the Lakers that are constantly in every conversation about equity, they lack draft equity. And the easiest thing to give up for Ben Simmons is draft equity. But I'll ask you, if that's the sales pitch to the Sixers, how do they take that? I mean, you can't look at Joel Embiid and say, okay, well, trust me, the next 3 or 4 drafts are really going to make this pan out. And unfortunately, like everybody says there's a robust market for him. I'm sure there is. I just doubt that robust market involves an actual star. It feels to me more like that robust market would involve a bunch of Mike Goods and a bunch of draft pieces. And that's not good enough for Philly.
Yeah, one of the offers, according to the Sacramento Bee, I love the name of that paper, is Buddy Hield, Marvin Bagley, and 3 first-round picks. It sounds great, but you can't bank on first-round picks helping you out right away. So I don't think you can take that deal.
Right. That's a great deal if you want to look at everybody and say, hey, we've looked at the timeline. We've looked at Brooklyn. We looked at Milwaukee. We're not going to be competitive to their level in the next 3 years. So instead, we're going to take this and we're going to build towards making sure that 3 years from now, we're great. Well, that's a particularly hard sales pitch for Philly, and that's a particularly hard sales pitch for Joel Embiid. Like, if I'm Embiid, I look at that for about 2 seconds. I'm like, cool, use all the draft equity you're going to get back for me because I don't want to play here. And in today's NBA, that is as crazy as it just takes one Embiid saying, I don't want to be here, and Philly is suddenly at complete rebuild mode. And that's real. Like, they have to be sensitive to that if they move Ben Simmons.
By the way, all these HGTV shows, they are Ben Simmons realities. You got fixer upper, flipper, flop, love it or list it. Windy City Rehab, like if he got traded to the Bulls, these are all perfect, like extreme makeover. Like this is the perfect channel for this whole saga that is going on right now. Bizarre, right? What's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers?
Aaron Rodgers is going to play for the Packers. And look, I think everybody has blown this out of proportion and everybody's forgotten the most important thing. Aaron Rodgers, I don't care what any expert says, Aaron Rodgers has absolutely no leverage in this negotiation because realistically, the Packers can go in and say, look, we didn't want to play Jordan Love yet. Well, our plan was year 3. Aaron made us play him. And all of a sudden, it's Aaron Rodgers' fault if Jordan Love comes out and looks lost. They can blame it on Rodgers the whole way. His contract this isn't an NBA contract. If he doesn't want to play for the Packers, they can look at him and say, you have 2 options, play for us or retire and write us a check for $32 million. Now, maybe he wants to do that, but the chance that the Packers are going to trade him anywhere and watch him win a Super Bowl while Jordan Love struggles, I don't think there's any way their egos will allow it. So absolutely, to me, the only 2 options for Jordan or for Aaron is that coming into this season, he's either going to play for the Packers or he's not going to play for anybody. And at some point, his competitive nature will absolutely spill over. I think he plays for the Packers and is a pain in the butt every week.
Yeah, like why all of a sudden? It seems in like the last 48 hours, people are now starting to like acquiesce to he might not play there. Like it feels like, oh my God, there's 13 days to camp. You know, you hear the old like the Mike Tannenbaums of the world, guys who were GMs, like, okay, he's complaining in February, March. Let's see if he's complaining in training. He's still complaining.
Yeah, but if I'm the Packers, look, they didn't care about his feelings when they didn't draft what they wanted. They didn't care about his feelings when they didn't communicate about how they drafted. And how many times in this process over the last 3 or 4 months have they come out and said things that organizations don't say if you're trying to rebuild the bridge between you and your star quarterback, right? So, I mean, I feel like the Packers, every step of the way, basically dug their heels in and said, all right, we did what we did. We're right to do it. And if Aaron doesn't like that, that's on Aaron, not on us.
Should be interesting to watch. 13 days till football. That's exciting. Now, today, I went with Providence College.
And
as
Providence
my
is
shirt.
I like that. I had a bunch of Vandy stuff that felt too Homer, so I appealed to your senses with an 8-bit Star Wars shirt. So, you know, got a little bit of like old school Nintendo vibe around my Star Wars people.
Yes.
So I thought, you know, it's not a school shirt, but it's one that would appeal to your sensibilities.
Yes, it does. I like it. You see the little friar up here? He's got a hockey stick. So I get asked a lot. I get asked a lot. Did you play hockey across? I said, what? I'm like the fat guy in the ice hockey game from Nintendo. They had like the real skinny guy, the medium guy, and that fat guy. I'm like, are you kidding me? Did I play ice hockey at Providence? No, I did not.
The next time I play Blades of Steel, that's all I'm going to think about with the little guy.
It was just ice hockey. No, the game was.
Oh, it was just ice hockey. You're right. It was just ice hockey. Yeah. I forgot that. Yeah. Yes. I love that game. So I'm going to get that on my Nintendo Switch now and play it just in your honor.
There you go. All right. Jason Fitz, Spain and Fitz is tonight, 7 to 9 on 97.3 ESPN, and game number 4 of the NBA Finals, I guess we'll push you off at 8 o'clock tonight.
Yep, you got it.
I'll talk to you later, pal.
Hey, brother.
Jason Fitz here on 97.3 ESPN, and we got a lot to do. When we come back, Michael Lee is going to join me. Now, Michael Lee, longtime NBA writer, wrote an interesting article about Giannis Antetokounmpo that I want to ask him whether or not that article relates to Ben Simmons as well. So we will dive into that with the great NBA writer Michael Lee from the Washington Post when he joins me coming up in about 5 minutes from now. Michael Lee says Antetokounmpo isn't scared of missing shots. It's part of what makes him great. Is that a mentality? Is that a mentality that Ben Simmons lacks? I want to ask Michael Lee, who's covered the Sixers, he's covered the NBA, and he's covering these NBA Finals. And I'll ask him that coming up next. All right, Sports Bash live 320. Michael Lee, longtime NBA writer, has covered the NBA for 20 years at the Washington Post. He's been at The Athletic and all other outlets around the country. At Mr. Michael Lee on Twitter. He writes today that Giannis Antetokounmpo isn't scared of missing shots. It's part of what makes him great. I think there's a lot to dive in on that. As we here in the Philadelphia region and all the Ben Simmons trade stuff, it's so hard to watch what Giannis does and doesn't do and not think of Ben Simmons. So I want to get Michael's insight on this story about Giannis not being scared and that part of being what makes him great. And if he sees the parallels of what happens to a guy like Ben Simmons, is that's what holding him back. But first, let's bring Michael in and kind of, dive a little deeper into this story, because Michael, it looked like back in the Brooklyn series that you're looking at what happened with Giannis, and it's like his, the offensive limitations was going to hold them back. How was he able to overcome these things and lead this Bucks team to where they are now?
He's just relentless. I mean, that's the thing is you got to have grit. There's you can have all the talent in the world, you can have all the ability, but if you don't have a determination and a will to just keep going, you're going to fail. And but you're going to fail miserably. The thing about Giannis is that he's not afraid to fail. And any great player, anybody that's ever achieved something, knows that you're going to take some lumps. You're going to come up short, but you got to be willing to go through that. And also have the confidence that you will, and put in the work to make sure that it doesn't happen again. I don't think that there's anybody we can go through. We can talk about Michael Jordan being the GOAT, but we can also find numerous last-second shots that he missed, even a couple that he's airballed, but he also knew he could make the next one. And that's the attitude you have to have. And I think a lot of times, you mentioned Ben Simmons, he gets in his own way because he wants to be too cool. He's worried about the aesthetics, how it looks, if it looks pretty. And if it doesn't, he doesn't really go as hard as he can. And I think that's what separates Giannis from a lot of other people, is that he knows he's going to fail. He knows he's going to make a mistake, but he also knows he's going to come right back at you. And that eventually you're going to have to either surrender and let him have it, or he's going to take it.
Yeah, I know, Michael, that you've been around the Sixers plenty over this Ben Simmons era. Do you watch Ben and see Giannis and wonder why Ben is not more like Giannis? Can he be more like Giannis?
No, I don't. I mean, I see the similarities. I see the ability. I see the skill set. And I see that, he's definitely somebody who has immense talent. But, I always feel like Ben is probably too aware. He's too conscious of how he's perceived. He really wants to look the part. And sometimes being the part is a little tougher. And I think that, I don't know where that comes from, but I always felt like the reason why he didn't shoot threes, the reason why he doesn't, really shoot jumpers or free throws well, is because he's afraid of how it's going to look. He's afraid of the appearances. He's afraid of the fact people will judge his form, that people will say he's got to do this, this, and that. And he doesn't want that. So what he'd rather do is make plays for others. He'd rather get a setup Tobias Harris for a jumper because he has a better looking jumper. He'd rather get Joel Embiid in the post because he's more effective in the post. He always feels like the better option is somebody else taking a shot than him. But if he's really going to be on a Giannis level, like an MVP type player, he's got to get past that. And I've said that for years. I said until he gets past that, until he gets past how everything looks and the perception and trying to be cool all the time, he's gonna come up short.
Yeah.
And we've seen that happen over and over again in the playoffs.
Yeah, Michael, without asking you to psychoanalyze these guys' backgrounds, but is there something in Giannis's background that Ben's background that make them mentally different? That Giannis says, I don't care what you think of the way my shot looks or how ugly it is or how bad I miss, and where Ben says, that does concern me.
Yeah, it's hard to kind of get into that. I just say from what I know about their backstories, the fact that Giannis is the child of Nigerian immigrants who were undocumented in Greece, and they had to hustle and scrap for everything that they got. I think that comes a mentality that you have to have it. Like, you have to go get it, and there's nothing that's going to stand in your way. You can sort of see the way he approaches basketball is probably the same way he approached life. Ben is a bit of a prodigy. he's somebody that's been anointed as the best player, from the time he left Australia to come to play in the United States for high school and for college. He's always been that guy. He's been the number one pick. He's been the top prospect. So I think in his mind, he's like, what am I doing wrong if everybody's telling me I'm great? I'm already a max player. I'm already, considered, an all NBA player, and my game isn't even polished yet. So why would I work on that if I'm already this good?
Right.
And I think that they have a different approach because of how they come up. I mean, Giannis was the 15th overall pick, and at the time, people didn't know who he was and never heard of him. Ben was a top player from the minute he stepped foot on American soil, and he sort of hasn't really tried to get better because no one's told him he had to.
It's a great point. And in the story, Michael, you do compare, you say, Ben shrank when the noise got louder about his free throws. How has Giannis been able to kind of, overcome his limitations at the free throw line? And they're counting at him. How has he been kind of be able to push through to the other night? I mean, he shot almost 80% from the line. And it wasn't like he was 8 for 10. I mean, they were putting him at the line, and he's making them.
He's 13 for 17, but his team needs that from him. His team needs all that he can give them. And if he's not aggressive, he's not assertive, then the Bucks are going to lose. And I think he understands his responsibility to make that team better. And that means that he has to attack the basket. That's what he's best at. He might get fouled, but he might not get fouled. They might get out of the way and let him dunk. But if he's not driving, if he's not going downhill and he's out there shooting threes, then he's bailing the defense out. So he's basically got to go out there and be who he is and without fear, because he doesn't have an alternative. If he goes out there and tries to be Kevin Durant for a game, it's going to look terrible. It's going to be a lot of brick threes, and there's going to be a lot of fadeaway misses and some air balls every now and then, and it won't be pretty. But if he attacks the rim and gets to the foul line, he opens up the floor in so many ways for everybody else, because they know that the Suns know he's coming, and they know if he's aggressive and flashing, then they got to collapse and they got to put attention to him. That means Chris Middleton gets an open look. That means Drew Holiday gets an open look. That means PJ Tucker gets wide open in the corner. So he understands that his responsibility to the Bucks is to always be on and to always be aggressive. And I think that people talk about his shortcomings and what he can't do, but I think that what skill set he doesn't have, like he doesn't have a bag like KD or whatever, but he has the ultimate skill. He has the skill that will make any player great, and that is that he goes hard all the time.
Yeah.
Not once in a while, not every time he feels like it, but every possession on both ends of the floor, he gives you everything he has. And that is a skill. And that is a skill that needs to be envied. And that's a skill that needs to be sort of celebrated about Giannis when people talk about him. Yeah, he doesn't have the most fluid jumper, but he goes hard. And you can't really deny a guy that's going to keep attacking.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because when they lose, it's almost like those limitations are what hold them back. But he adds, it's like it fuels him to somehow overcome it, even though the limitations are there. And it's something that no coach or nobody can really get out of you. You have to have that kind of innate in you, right?
Yeah, I mean, every now and then you can sort of see that there are moments where it does get overwhelming. I think that, he had to take himself out of game 3 and, and kind of tapped out and just had to check out because it kind of took over for him. But his brother's there. His brother's always there to kind of whisper in his ear and say things. It's a unique situation that his brother's his teammate, his older brother is his teammate, and he can always say the right thing to get him centered. I was thinking about Game 7 against the Nets, and he was struggling a little bit. He was having a rough outing. He shot an air ball free throw in Game 7, and everyone's laughing at him and mocking him. And he sort of felt it. And then his brother kind of said something to him late in the game, and there he is hitting the tying basket in overtime over Kevin Durant. So that's the type of thing that you can say about Giannis is that, yeah, he's bionic and he's coming back from, knee injuries and everything, but he is human too. And every now and then we all need somebody to be in our ear to give us the confidence.
Michael Lee from the Washington Post, at Mr. Michael Lee. It's a great story on what makes Giannis so special and so different. I want to ask you, because obviously you've covered this league for almost 20 years. You've been around the Sixers a lot. I've seen you at the Wells Fargo Center, so you obviously know what's going on with Simmons here. What do you make of the recent murmurs and trade possibilities? Do you think that this is the time that this is the best time to try to move him, or do you think Daryl Morey will value him enough to keep him here for another try with Joel Embiid?
He was already on the block last season. I mean, he was discussing the James Harden trade, and that's no secret. And I think that that's been in his head for the entire year. It's probably the first time in his career that he hasn't felt, undying commitment from the organization. And he knows that that the ground that he stands on is a little shaky. So I think from the beginning, that's part of the reason why he shrunk so badly in the playoffs, is because he knows that if he fails, that there's a chance that this could be the end for him. So I think that's always been in the back of his mind. And if you look at Daryl Morey, you look at what he is in terms of just bringing the analytics and elevating that in his game. What does Ben do from an analytical perspective that Daryl Morey is going to love? On the defensive end, yeah, he's great. But in terms of an offensive player, he's not going to space the floor, not going to shoot threes. He's not even going to attack the rim as much as you would want. So I think that he's always in the mind of Morey. I think he's been expendable in some respects. It's just, can you get a solid return for him? Has he diminished his value so much from his postseason performance that you can't get what a guy who's 24 years old, who is still an all NBA caliber player, a defensive first team all defense player. Can you get a return for him that warrants that, especially when he's locked in under contract for the next 4 years? And I think that's what they have to pursue is trying to get an all-star level player in return, because teams are going to try to get him on the low, even though he's still an excellent player. He has his flaws, he has his shortcomings, but I just don't know if he ever really fit into how Morey has traditionally built teams. You could say like he had a Shane Battier, who was a great defensive player, but he wasn't the guy who had the ball in his hands. He was just a guy that was a lockdown defender. If the ball's going to be in his hands, he has to do more to help them on an offensive end, and he has to be a guy who's willing to take the shots. If he's not taking shots and he's not setting screens and doing everything else that he needs to do to open up the floor for guys, then what value is it if he plays point guard? The only way I can see him staying is if they get no return and try to add a Kyle Lowry to the mix and just put the ball in Lowry's hands and let Ben Simmons be their power forward, and then maybe they can find something. But if Ben is insisting on being the point guard, then I think that the Sixers have to do what they can to try to find him a new home.
Michael, obviously, Ben has been in the league and people have been waiting. You just wrote this great piece on Giannis and his inner fire. Is there anything you have seen that suggests to you that Ben Simmons will work on his skill set as it's being suggested and will come back a player that is different from the one we've seen over his first 3-4 seasons?
I don't see it happening unless he's moved and he has to, reestablish himself with another community. I think that if he's still in Philadelphia, I don't know if the coaches here are going to be able to convince him that he needs to do more than he already has. And I think that's sort of been the problem from the beginning. That was a criticism and why they got rid of Brett Brown, is that he wasn't hard enough on Ben and demanding him to do more. He would always say things in the media like, I'm asking Ben to take more shots and I want you guys to mention it. But Ben wasn't really respecting that approach. And then Doc Rivers comes and he already knows the personnel. He has to know what their limitations are. But he didn't seem to demand that of Ben either. And so if nobody's ever going to ask him to be more of what he is, then when is the light ever going to go off? I don't think it will here. So if he's moved, he'll probably wind up with a coach who's going to say, Ben, we need this from you. And I think he'll put in the work. But I think one of the main problems that the Sixers have had over the years is that Ben has such a tight circle. He keeps everything, with his family and with his really, really close friends. So he's not really trying to get outside help when it comes to his game. And if he's not going to do that, then how is he ever going to grow? Somebody's got to get in his ear and say that. So far, nobody's been willing to do it. And I just don't think it's going to happen in Philadelphia.
Overall, you see them keeping or moving Ben Simmons this offseason?
Yeah, like I said, it just depends on what kind of package they get in return. I don't think they're in a desperate position where they have to move him. But I think that if they do keep him, then the objective will be to find somebody else to run the team. And I think that'll be something that he'll have to adjust with. And if he can't deal with that, then I'm sure he'll force their hand and make them do something. But I think that unless they're going to have to get a trade of value, for a 24-year-old, 6'10", all defensive player, all NBA caliber player. He's not a scrub. He's just not, an MVP candidate just yet. If he decides to commit himself to working hard and developing the aspect of the game that he just refuses to do for the last couple of years, I think he could really become a truly special player. But right now, he's just not there.
Michael Lee, check out his piece over at the Washington Post on Giannis Antetokounmpo. Says he isn't scared of missing shots. It's part of what makes him great. It's a fantastic read and closer look at Giannis and this Bucks team, 2-1. Where's this series head, Michael?
Tonight's going to be the swing game. I picked the Bucks to win the series. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I think if it is going to happen, tonight has to be a must-win for them. And so I would expect that both teams really want to come out and play well. I know, Devin Booker's got to have a better performance than he had the other night. He's really been struggling from the field. They sort of had an answer for him. But I think that if Giannis keeps playing the way he's playing, the Bucks really have a chance of turning the tide and tying this up.
That's tonight right here on 97.3 ESPN. Follow him at Mr. Michael Lee and check out his column in the Washington Post. It's a fantastic look at Giannis Antetokounmpo. Michael, we appreciate the time, pal.
Hey, thanks for having me on anytime. Appreciate it.
All right, Michael Lee here on the Sports Bash. An excellent piece, an inner look at Giannis Antetokounmpo, and it's a great kind of parallel to what we see with Ben Simmons. But I think Michael really breaks it down beautifully in terms of the inner fire that Giannis has is something that Ben Simmons lacks. How do you get that? It's not from a coach. It's not from teammates. You've got to want that. And that's where I agree. Like, I never blame Brett Brown for not getting more from Ben Simmons. That's on Ben Simmons. And I'm not sure if Ben Simmons is willing and ready to fix that, as Michael suggested. More Sports Bash on the way, brought to you by Matt Blatt Kia. They want to get you approved today. Matt Blatt, 6211 Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. Thanks to Michael Lee. Coming up, football at 4. Jeff Mosher is in the house. We'll talk a little Eagles. Just, 12 days before training camp now? Plus, do you remember for the 14th of July, Jeff Kerr on the NFL Tonight? I hope you'll stick with me. If you're watching the show on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, hit that share button, hit that like button, hit that retweet button. Get it out there. Leave your comments for the video in the comments section. And if you're listening on 97.3 ESPN Radio, the text board is open, 609-403-0973. You can always text us through the free mobile app. There is a texting button right on the app. So if you're listening on the app, you can hit text the studio, and that will come to us as well. Variety of ways to engage. Sup, Jerry? Hello, Jerry. That picture doesn't look like you, Jerry, by the way. Looks like a fake Jerry. I'll be back with more Sports Bash. All right, 343. Thanks to Mr. Michael Lee from the Washington Post. Some really good insight there. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Mike, what did Jordan say to his trainer after he was eliminated by the Magic in the Last Dance? He said, we'll see you tomorrow. Ben doesn't have that inside him. That's why he's at Wimbledon and not at the Sixers facility. That I would agree with. I don't think Ben Simmons has that inner drive to be great. I think that is well stated, that is something that Ben's lacking. Michael Lee said it. Ben was the number one pick in the draft. He was the top college recruit. He's been third team at All-NBA. He's been first team All-NBA defense. And he does it without having that innate quality. It's the plus and the minus of Ben Simmons, that he is so good without working at his game, like you would like to see others do. So if he actually, this is where when people look at Ben Simmons and say, what do you he stinks. And he is a third-team All-NBA player and a runner-up for the Defensive Player of the Year, first-team All-Defensive Player. He's a three-time All-Star in a league. It's not like the Pro Bowl. It's not like the Major League Baseball where they just make every team get an all-star player. You have to earn your way on the NBA all-star team. You actually have to have real talent and the respect of your peers. Ben Simmons is no stiff, but that text message, for once, is accurate. He doesn't have inside of him what it takes. Giannis does. That's why the story from Michael Lee is so good. That's why I tried to get Michael Lee on the show today. And thankfully, he obliged. Giannis, you would never say, man, what a great shooter. No, you would say, why are you shooting? He's not a good shooter. A 15-footer? Nah. A three-point shot? Not very good. Free throw shot? Not great. But he doesn't care. He has that inner fire that separates him. Simmons might be the more talented individual skill guy. He might have more innate basketball ability. He's probably a better passer. He's probably got a better handle. He's got more speed. He has better open floor. But he doesn't have the inner drive. That's what separates him and Giannis. That's the separation. We've said this many times. Giannis isn't a good shooter, but he's a willing shooter. Ben Simmons is not a willing shooter. Ben Simmons is what holds him back is Ben Simmons. And maybe and that's why I asked the question to Michael. I said, I'm not asking you to be, to go and psychoanalyze these two guys because I don't know, their backgrounds, but part of that could be what's the problem here. Giannis came from nothing, built himself to something. How do you get there? You have this inner drive. Ben Simmons, father played professional basketball, lived the life of a professional basketball player growing up, happened to be a good basketball player himself. He rode the coattails of the life that he was living. He didn't have to work to get to that life. He kind of innately was bred in that life. Giannis, I got news for you. When he grew up, he probably didn't know what a basketball was. He had to get there somehow. He had to want to get there. He wasn't just good enough to be there. Ben was good enough to be there. Ben came flying out at birth, good enough to be here. The problem is his good enough is good enough to be here, but it's not good enough to get him to the next level. He was good enough at birth. Now he also needs to want to be better than the guy that came out like this. Giannis, who knows if he was good enough at birth? Who knows when he even started playing? But whatever it was that he wanted to do when he said, I want to be a professional basketball player, he willed himself to get to be the MVP of the league.
This is something I've talked about on Game Night, Mike, and that is people forget that, Giannis came from dirt poverty in Greece. He was selling things to make money for his family. When he started playing basketball, he saw that there might be a path to the NBA, and he started working harder and harder. And then when he got to the NBA, he was made fun of because he was too skinny. Then he was made fun of because he couldn't do, for example, free throws, three-point shooting. And every point along the way in his life, it has been fighting uphill to earn everything he's got. Desperation creates work ethic. Ben Simmons was anointed the next thing. He was handed the crown before he ever earned it. Giannis desperately was fighting for that crown. Keyshawn Johnson, if you ever saw the documentary 30 for 30 Broke, you've probably seen it.
Yes.
If anybody hasn't seen it, go watch it. There's a segment in it where they highlight athletes who didn't go broke. And Keyshawn Johnson was one of them. And he had a great point where he said, I came from Compton and I heard the gunshots. And I said, I never want to come back here. I was never going to let anybody take me back to that point. I was desperate to never be poor again. And when you have that mentality, when you come from not having things, then when you get things, you become desperate to not let it go. Your competitive edge is always there. Ben doesn't have that edge.
No, he doesn't, obviously. He lacks that inner, and guess what? That's not his fault either. Like, it's not your fault that you're not born with that inner fire.
No, it's not.
You can't just grow that inner fire. Like,
No.
You got lazy people who just are lazy. And it's like, people will say, well, why can't you do this? Or whatever it is, there's that part of you that says, well, I don't want to do that. Or
Right.
I don't care to do that. And Ben, in his mind, I'm good enough.
Right.
I am an all-NBA player. You might not like my game, but I have the respect of my peers in this league. I have been voted 3-time All-Star. So the fans might not appreciate my game, but the people in the league do. And that's good enough for me. And that's why he is where he is there are people that look at Ben and say, you're great, dude. You're great. And he says, the people that matter to me the most think I'm great.
Right.
The people who I don't care about, I don't care what you think. And there's his problem. It's good and bad. You shouldn't care what others think, but caring what those people think sometimes is what fuels you to be better.
Right. It's you got to find the fuel. That's a good word to use somewhere. For Ben, I don't think he has the fuel. I think that he's a little sensitive. Michael Lee just mentioned to you about the fact that, when the moment he realized he was on the trade block in the Harden sweepstakes and that the organization was no longer 100% committed to him, it affected him. And if Ben Simmons is someone who's always out there looking for affirmation and, adulation and people to tell him he's good enough and that's all he wants to listen to, then guess what? It doesn't matter what anybody else has to say. Ben will never be more until he wants to be more.
Well, yeah, and that's the frustrating part is he will never be more until he wants to be more. Agree. Does he want to be more? What drives someone to want to be more? That's I've said before, can't blame Brett Brown for that.
No.
Just like you can't blame Doc Rivers for that.
Because you can't blame another person for someone else's choices. If Ben Simmons chooses this is who he wants to be and this is who he is, then that's on him.
Well, it's not that he chooses it sometimes, though. That's who he is. You know what I'm saying? Like, there are times where you are frustrated by a talent because you're like, this guy's got all this talent. I want to get more out of it. That person doesn't want to be better, and partially because it's not in him to be better.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. He doesn't have what they call the it factor. He doesn't have that drive. Like for example, over on 973 ESPN.com, you have the article up. Michael Jordan's in the area. Okay. And Michael Jordan, the greatest player of all time, right? Well, why is he the greatest player of all time? Because Michael Jordan took every slight, everything said about him, and he turned it into fuel. Michael Jordan, when he was put into the Pro Basketball Hall of Fame, goes on a diatribe about somebody wrote something about him when he was in high school and college in North Carolina. That's who he is. That he's the guy who says, I'm taking everything as fuel because I'm driven to beat everyone and be better than everybody. Ben Simmons doesn't have that in him. It's just not who he is.
No, it's not who he is, and it's not his fault per se. I mean, we're all wired the way we're wired, right? And this isn't to get in some philosophical predestination, conversation here, but you're wired the way you're wired. Yeah, some people change and some people. Ben Simmons is at a point where he has made it to the highest level. He has made it to accolades that not very many people have gotten. He doesn't see what you see. He's not looking through your lenses, So he's saying, I don't know what these people are talking about. I'm the rookie of the year. I'm a 3-time All-Star. I'm third-team All-NBA. I'm defensive player of all first-team All-NBA. What's wrong with these people? He doesn't look at it like I'm holding my team back. I'm the problem. And quite frankly, he's not the problem, but he was a huge issue in this series. No question about that. But I don't know that he has that inner will and want to notice that he's part of the problem. A big part of the problem in the Hawks series, by the way.
Yep.
A couple text messages coming in. We'll get to those. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Brian says, I don't think the major problem is Ben. We don't have a closer. Well, I would agree with that. I don't think Ben's the problem. I think he was a big problem. Look, they had to hide Ben all throughout the regular season. They hid him all regular season. The problem was it manifested to deteriorate to become a much bigger problem than it normally is, and they couldn't overcome it. Back with more Sports Bash. Football at 4 coming up. Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you by Prop Swap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets and take your profit. Find out how at PropSwap.com. Jeff Mosher is scheduled to join us for today's Football at 4. We got a lot to dive into as we get closer to the start of training camp. By the way, the Eagles, according to the latest salary cap numbers for all 32 teams, couple free agents out there. Steve Nelson is one of them that we keep looking at. Obviously, the Eagles have $3.2 million of cap space still available to do something. I don't think that's going to get Steve Nelson done. You could possibly clear out $8.5 million, I guess, with Zach Ertz. That would bring you up to around $11 million. That would put you somewhere in the middle of the pack range. Could they do something there? We shall see. ESPN.com today put out their rankings for the wide receivers, the best wide receivers in football. We've been looking at them throughout the last 2 weeks here. And yesterday we did running backs, and we told you Miles Sanders was not in the top 10, but he did land on the honorable mention list. I did not look at the wide receiver list yet today. I'm going to do it live right now. I have not had the chance to take a look at who made that list. I'm going to go out on a limb and say the Eagles do not have a top 10 or honorable mention player on the wide receiver list, okay? So tomorrow, by the way, is the tight ends. They'll be the last one. So going from 10 up to 1 at wide receiver, the list includes A.J. Brown from the Tennessee Titans. Number 9, DK Metcalf. Boy, he's always a pain to hear his name, Eagle fans. I know how many people get really perturbed when they hear DK Metcalf's name. And no, yes, you could have had him over J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. Michael Thomas from the New Orleans Saints. Number 8. Number 7 is Mike Evans from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Number 6 is Keenan Allen. Number 6, Keenan Allen, I thought was a little bit of a surprise to me from the Los Angeles Chargers. I mean, I like Allen. He just seems like, I don't know, he's not as dynamic as some of these other guys, and maybe that doesn't matter. But I was a little surprised at Keenan Allen. Like, if you told me Keenan Allen or Mike Evans, I'd probably take Mike Evans. Keenan Allen or Michael Thomas. Keenan Allen or DK Metcalf. I feel like Allen is not the same physical specimen maybe as those guys are, but kind of interesting to see him fit. Number 6 on this list. Number 5, Julio Jones. Now, I was a little surprised that Julio Jones was number 5. I'm imagining this is based on his past, obviously not last year. I mean, he's still top 5 wide receiver career over the last 10 years. Yes, not last year. But an AFC scout said, quote, still the best. Injuries aren't an issue. If they were contending last year, I think he would have played. So that's just a little insight on who Julio Jones is. And still top 5 in the NFL. And keep in mind, they also had A.J. Brown, number 10. So they now have the 10th and the 5th best wide receiver in football, according to scouts, players, coaches, executives. Number 4, Tyreek Hill from the Kansas City Chiefs. Number 3, Stephon Diggs from the Buffalo Bills. Number 2, DeAndre Hopkins from the Arizona Cardinals. And number 1, Devontae Adams from the Green Bay Packers. The number 1 receiver in the league, Devontae Adams. And how many times have we talked about, wow, they never went out and got him a 1 receiver in the first round? Well, according to scouts, executive coaches, and the like, they didn't need to because they already have the best receiver in football in Devontae Adams. All right, let's bring Jeff Mosher in for today's Football at 4. And when we talked to Moshe on Monday, we had kind of teed up that the running backs were coming out on Tuesday, Moshe, and I had asked you, do you think Miles Sanders would be on that list in the top 10 or in the honorable mention category? You said you didn't think so. Do you know where he landed?
I feel like I thought I said I could see him landing in the honorable mention category, but not the top 10. I feel like that would. There really aren't like 15 really great running backs in the league, so I felt honorable mention would be more of his terrain.
He was an honorable mention. He was one of the guys mentioned. He did not make the top 10. But do you know what the personnel person said? Actually, it was an AFC defensive coach said about Sanders was he's underrated. In a better scheme, he'd be a prominent guy, and he has a great burst. So it sounds like people around the league agree with us that they just didn't use him very well.
Well, they didn't use him very well. Obviously, the offense itself is dysfunctional. The offensive line was beat up. Here's one thing I thought about Miles Sanders last year, and I said this a lot, and it was helpful to have Greg Cosell on with us on Inside the Birds, and he said the same thing. So now I feel like, the good minds think alike here. Miles Sanders ran hard last year. And everybody remembers the 80-yard and 70-yard touchdowns that he had, but he had quite a few good runs inside the goal line, inside the 5. And overall, I thought he ran hard and ran tough and was not just a kind of a scat back who was always trying to bounce it to the outside. I really thought, even on some of those long touchdown runs, Mike, that he had, those were made possible by some really good vision cuts as far as cutting back to the backside of the block. And I thought as a runner, he improved last year from the year before. Now, where he regressed, and you don't know if this was just him not working hard enough or if it was part of the offensive dysfunction, but catching the ball. There were a lot of bad passes that were thrown his way. There were also some catchable passes thrown his way that he didn't. There was also a few times that they used him in a way that I thought was very advantageous, where they lined him up outside as a wide receiver. If you remember the Bengals game, they had him matched up against Akeem Davis-Gaither, the rookie linebacker, and he put a move on Gaither and burned him up the sideline. He was wide open, and Carson threw it about 5 rows into the stands. So that's basically last year in a nutshell. I think the guy has all the talent in the world to be a good running back. The big question on him is, will he go back to being the pass catcher that he was his rookie year? And can he prove with this coaching staff, in this scheme, whatever you want to call it, can he prove to be a running back who you can rely on in the fourth quarter, who can handle the carries that get from 15 to 20? I imagine the Eagles are going to be in a lot of closer games this year and kind of have to gut it out in the fourth quarter. Can he do that if they have a lead? Can he move the chains? If they're behind, but they're still trying to move the ball on the ground in the fourth quarter, can he get that total of carries up to 16, 17, 18, like you saw Brian Westbrook do once he got to year 4 or 5 of his career? Can he be that guy? Because it was clear, for whatever reason, Mike, that last year the coaches did not want to give him the ball in the fourth quarter. Now, they were down in a lot of games, but even when they were running, they did not want to give him the ball in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and one of the things that one of the personnel people in this piece brought up was he's the fastest back in the league when it comes to crossing the line of scrimmage, 21 miles an hour. He's the fastest running back. So he is a big play threat, and I don't think that gets brought up enough.
Yeah, I don't want to call him a secret, right? But you have to go back to his career. When Penn State recruited him, he was, I believe, a 5-star running back recruit because he was just a tremendous athlete with speed and quickness and, shiftiness, everything that you're looking for in a running back. And then Saquon Barkley, who was like a 2 or a 3-star recruit, wound up decommitting to Rutgers, going to Penn State, and becoming and blossoming into a superstar to the point where Miles basically had to get whatever scraps Saquon was given up for, in blowout games for a few years. And not until his last year at Penn State did Miles really break onto the scene. And if you talk to NFL scouts, what they really love, especially at the running back position, is to have more than, 8 or 9 games of tape on a guy. They really want to examine these guys to the fullest extent. And there just wasn't a ton of tape on Miles as a feature back in college. That's why he wound up going in the second round. He's also not the biggest guy in the world, but you saw it, though, as a rookie, that he had that electric speed, that he could not only help a team, the Eagles, in the running game, but as a rookie, he took a couple of passes against Detroit, against Minnesota, that were down the field, 30, 40 yards over the shoulder. He had that playmaking ability to him. So, yes, he has the measurables that you're looking for at that position. There's no doubt about his athleticism, his speed, his quickness, and all of that.
Yeah, I know. And he's the kind of guy that could, he had multiple 70-plus yard runs last year. He's a big play, dual threat kind of guy. I'm very interested to see how Sirianni uses him in the pass game. And I guess more than anything, how he utilizes the running back position. I mean, are they going to use two guys? Are going to be kind of a thunder and lightning? Is he going to be the main guy? I know that's something that there's been kind of some thoughts that they're going to try to feature him. I love what they did with Jonathan Taylor in Indianapolis.
Right. A totally different runner, Jonathan Taylor, big, powerful back from Wisconsin, of course, where they breed them. Upright runner, which is not like Miles Sanders, who plays with better pad leverage, but Jonathan Taylor really came on at the second half of the year and kind of became a bell cow for an offense that was trying to – you saw what the Colts did. It's like they brought in Phillip Rivers. He was sort of at the end. They were trying to get whatever they could out of him without having to make him throw the ball, 45, 55 times. They were trying to get the most they could out of Phillip and be as competitive as possible while still being a strong run team, a strong defensive team. And so that's what they were able to get with Jonathan Taylor. I don't think we should expect that kind of similar style of approach here in Philadelphia. We know the owner doesn't really think fondly of big-time running games. He wants passing games. But that doesn't mean that Miles Sanders cannot be a sort of, listen, this is all we have to work with, right? Like when we talk about Eagles running backs, like a Shady or a Westbrook, like a dual threat kind of guy who can hurt you as a runner, as a pass catcher. He obviously has to show that he can handle that kind of workload. But again, the DNA is there for him to be able to do that. And I would think if you really want to know about what the Eagles are going to do with their running game in particular, I'll just say be on the lookout. A lot of this will depend on the kid's development. And I'm talking about Kenny Gainwell for a second here. If Kenneth Gainwell can just as a rookie acclimate as a good pass catcher, good kind of change-up back, watch out for what this coaching staff might do with Miles Sanders and Kenneth Gainwell in the field together to create some major mismatches. I know we used to talk about that with what you could do with Darren Sproles and whoever the future runner was at the time, and for whatever reason it may or may not. I mean, LeGarrette Blount and Jay Ajayi weren't those types to pair him with, but Miles Sanders and Kenneth Gainwell gives you more of that opportunity to really stress a defense when you have both of those guys in the backfield.
Over at InsideTheBirds.com, you and Andrew DeCecco are kind of doing some camp questions. Your question, your latest one is, where will the Birds most be exposed? I think this one's kind of an easy one or two answers, right? It's either linebacker or corner. They are the two weakest spots on the field. Is there anything close?
No. I mean, there are certainly question marks, right, at wide receiver, and we still have a lot to see from Jalen Reagor and, of course, Travis Fulgham and what he's going to be, and Devontae Smith. But I feel like it's fairer to have expectations that Devontae Smith's going to be a formidable player in the NFL. He may not be a stud. I have no idea. But you have expectations that a guy picked that high is going to come in and have an impact and be something relative to successful as a rookie. And then, of course, we'll see with Reagor and Ward and Fulgham. But at the end of the day, this linebacker group and the cornerback group, with the exception of Darius Slay, is not going to scare guys like Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady and Dak Prescott and Justin Herbert and, oh my gosh, all those guys I just mentioned are all playing the Eagles in the first 6 weeks of the season, right? Along with Matt Ryan. Week one, they're just not going to. And I get that we have to give Jonathan Gannon a chance to implement his scheme and that it's going to look different. There's going to be disguise. There's going to be more, at least we expect and hope and hear that there's going to be disguise and more guesswork for the quarterback. But these guys that I just mentioned, they've been around the block. Like they've seen it all. Matt Ryan's seen it all. Mahomes has seen it all. Brady has seen it all. Dak Prescott has seen most of it. Ryan Fitzpatrick has seen it all. So it's great to have guesswork, but at the end of the day, talent is what you need. And when you look at the linebacker level and look at the cornerbacks as we sit here today, and even the safety picture, none of those quarterbacks I mentioned are going to sit there and be very scared to face that kind of back end of a defense. And when the game is won, a lot of the times before the snap, it doesn't really matter what you're doing from a disguise standpoint. They're going to find the
Most you guys looked at the weakest, you looked at the strongest, and I think this one was a little bit more difficult to kind of come up with, which is good. I mean, there's two glaring holes, but where are they the best? Where are their best, positions heading into camp?
Yeah, and not surprising with the Eagles when you talk about what their strengths are, the trenches. It's always the trenches because I think that they do this well, they prioritize and build in the trenches. Now, Andrew felt that the offensive line was the strongest part of the team. And then you can certainly understand that when you have an all-pro right tackle, an all-pro right guard, an all-pro center. But I argued that, yes, while that's true, these guys have been on the team for quite a while. These are all guys who were on the Super Bowl team, and we are several years now removed. It's still a strong point, no doubt. And Sayamalo is a good left guard, and we'll see what happens at left tackle. But no matter what, whoever wins left tackle, we'll all feel good about whoever wins because he won the competition. But again, it's kind of an unproven guy who still has a lot a lot of development ahead of him at a very premier position, whether it's Mailata or Dillard. When you look at the defensive line, Mike, I felt that was stronger because of fewer question marks. Your two defensive tackles, Hargrave and Cox, are very good. Hargrave really came on in the second half of last year. Obviously, Brandon Graham is who he is, and he showed no signs of decline last year. He made the Pro Bowl for the first time. Barnett, you can call him a question, but when he's healthy, he gives you a standard level of production that's fairly acceptable. Josh Sweat, as a second-year performer last year, broke out 6 sacks. Ryan Kerrigan you bring in. So you can question the depth after that, guys like Ridgeway, the rookies that they drafted, but your top 6 pass rushers are all pretty proven commodities in the NFL. And they're, even though Fletcher Cox and Graham are getting older, they haven't yet showed any kind of signs of wearing down.
Yeah, I would lean to the offensive line, but I think there's more question marks with the injuries there. I like the depth their offensive line has more so than the depth the defensive line has. And the defensive line doesn't have the injury issues as much as the offensive line. So that is a good debate there on which is the strongest position between the two. But I would ask you, if your strongest positions are your offensive and defensive line, that's typically a team that thinks they're going to be pretty good.
Well, yeah, typically. So here's the thing. Here's my motto. If you're strong in the offensive and defensive line, you give your team a really good chance to compete on a week-in, week-out basis, right? But that doesn't mean that you're going to be an unbeatable team. For example, the Cleveland Browns, for the last 3 or 4 years, have had some pretty good pass rushers and a pretty good offensive line. But it wasn't until last year that they were actually formidable. They won 11 games. They made the playoffs, and that's because they had 2 amazing running backs and a scheme that really catered to it. And obviously, they had a pretty good tight end. They had a decent defense. And Baker Mayfield, they kind of worked him along slowly and developed him as the year went on. And they also took advantage of playing a really, last play schedule, of course. They had some really weird bad weather games that they wound up would win in the fourth quarter. So everything kind of went right for them last year. But you can look at years past and say the Browns have actually been pretty strong in the trenches, but they've been an awful team because they were not good at other key positions all around the map. And that's going to be the challenge for the Eagles. They should be able to move the ball from a running standpoint with their offensive line, should be able to protect the quarterback. They should be able to hit the quarterback. Last year, I think they were the number 1 sack team in the NFL, but their defense was 20th overall because they were weak in cornerback and safety and other areas. So it should keep them competitive, but it doesn't mean that all of a sudden the Eagles are going to be a great team because they're strong in the trenches.
I guess we'll leave with this. Jeff Mosher is with us from the Inside the Birds podcast. It's Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. I guess it was suggested by a former NFL player that the locker room is already lost by Nick Sirianni, that he is not being able to lead these guys. Lane Johnson says, name names. I want some names out here. So do we already have turmoil with the new coaching staff?
You got to love Philly, Mike.
Right?
Look, far be it for me to slam Michael Robinson because he's a Penn Stater, and I got to give him some love for that. And he was a great quarterback at Penn State. I'll say this. There's a lot of unanswered questions with how he delivered information. In other words, when did he talk to these players? Was this recent, or was it back after Sirianni's first 2 press conferences when everybody and their mother was questioning whether this guy can be a leader of a locker room? So I have no idea who he spoke to. There's no doubt in my mind that surmised, and I think that's irresponsible to say that Michael Robinson made it up. I'd be positive that he did hear this. But the locker room, the roster right now, Mike, is what, at 80, 85? Like, I'm sure there are players who wonder about him, and I'm sure there are players who like him. And if you speak to 3 players who don't like him, you might be the one who speaks to 3 players who does like him.
Yeah.
So I would say take it all with a grain of salt. Nobody knows anything about the guy until he starts actually coaching. And a true measure of a coach is really, in my opinion, is how these guys respond when their team loses tough games or the chips or your backs are against the wall. And, certainly in Doug's first few years, the Eagles really rallied around him, and that kind of made his hallmark as a coach until last year. So we have a lot to find out about Nick Sirianni. I would not be upset by what Michael Robinson said. I would just say that is human nature, that they're in every single locker room. You're going to find people who are skeptical of the head coach, and you're going to find people who love the head coach. I mean, Bill Belichick gets thrown under the bus by his players a lot, and you guys got 6 rings, right?
Yeah.
So how often do you hear guys leave and say, "Oh, I had no fun there"?
I guess I guess it's good, to see Lane Johnson say names. Then say that. Enough with the BS. Like Lane Johnson, you certainly want that guy in your corner. Like if those guys are going silent, it's good to see that Lane Johnson's the first guy. By the way, for the people out there, Michael Robinson, the former fullback, running back, I don't know what position he even played in the NFL, but he didn't have a very illustrious career. Says, I'm not going to say any names, but I know some guys in that locker room who they question this guy, talking about Sirianni, and they question he can truly lead this team. I mean, that's not a great way to enter camp, I can tell you that much.
It's not, but it's. I mean, honestly, it's fair. It's fair to say I'm not sure about this first-year head coach who I never even heard of until now. I mean, don't you think that if you would have asked 10 people about Andy Reid before he coached his first game with the Eagles, you would have found some guys like, I don't know about this guy. I never heard of him before. Now, that doesn't mean he's going to be Andy. I hate when I say that, right? And then people use that, like for example, for the offensive line. I'm sure you've heard callers or people say, well, look what happened to the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs when they didn't have an offensive line. This year, the Eagles are going to have a really good offensive line. Okay, it doesn't mean they're going to be the Kansas City Chiefs because they have an offensive line. That one has nothing to do with the other. But the point is, every first-year coach who's not been a head coach is going to come with the question marks, and fans have said the exact same thing about Nick Sirianni. Still, even now, people say, I don't really know about this guy. That's fair. That's normal.
No question. Absolutely. You're right. The Andy Reid thing is a good one because nobody knew who he was. The Sirianni is similar to that. And Doug, by the way, there were questions about him when he got hired as he was the worst hire, all that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
So
remember, I mean, it's everywhere. Joe Judge, go listen to what Giants fans said when they turned down there was a more prominent name head coach. Matt Rule, right? Everybody wanted Matt Rule in New York. He went to Carolina. They hired Joe Judge. And it was like, New York's like, who the hell is Joe Judge? That's just normal.
Yeah. All right. Good stuff. Football at 4 here, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It'll drop tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. with Jeff Mosher, Adam Kaplan. And, of course, you can check that out wherever you listen to your podcast, and check out InsideTheBirds.com for another edition of Football at 4. Tomorrow, Adam Kaplan is here. Andrew's on Friday as we continue our looks at the divisions. And, of course, Eagles training camp is less than 2 weeks away. All right, Jeff, take care, pal.
All right, Mike, thanks for having me. Good talk.
Absolutely. Yeah, real good talk, actually. Good stuff on Miles Sanders. If you missed the conversation on Miles Sanders, go to our website, 973ESPN.com, to find out what NFL personnel think of one Miles Sanders. Top 10, honorable mention. Where did he fall on that list? Check it out at 973ESPN.com. Also, over at 973ESPN.com, the Sixers have interest in 2 Kings players for Ben Simmons. And which 5 teams are said to have interest in Ben Simmons? That's all right now at 973ESPN.com. Plus, check out video of NBA legend Michael Jordan, spotted in a popular Margate restaurant where I happen to have my 40th birthday dinner. So me and Jordan have that going for us, which is nice. Little catty Shaq reference for you. All right, what do we got coming up? Oh, today's July 14th, which means Do you remember? Find out next here on the Sports Bash. Do you remember 431? These are events that happened on 7/14, July 14th. I'm Mike Gill. My producer is Josh Henning. We've got some interesting events to kind of go over, including a very famous play that happened in the All-Star game involving Pete Rose. I give it away?
Yeah, you did. You gave it away.
What was Pete Rose willing to do to win an exhibition game? Remember we were talking about Ben Simmons? I don't think Ben Simmons is doing what Pete Rose did in the All-Star game.
Never. Ever.
So let's start there. 1970, Pete Rose. How many people, by the way, when I said 1970 and Pete Rose just were like, oh my God, am I old? Like Pete Rose was doing this in 1970. I mean, there's people out there that probably think Pete Rose retired like 10 years ago. You know that feeling of like, can't believe Pete Rose hasn't been playing that long.
Right.
He started playing in the 60s.
Yeah.
Pete Rose barreled into catcher Ray Fosse to score the game-winning run in the 12th inning of the Major League Baseball All-Star Game at Cincinnati's Riverfront Stadium. Fosse was attempting to tag Rose out at the plate when he violently collided with him, causing him to drop the ball. Both players were injured, and Rose was criticized for the act that was considered unnecessary for an exhibition game. Do you have a problem with Rose barreling over Fosse in an All-Star game?
No, because that's how they played back then. Back then, that's what they did. Listen, they don't do that now, but that was part of the era. It's like, guys getting clotheslined in the 80s, right? It was, hey, that's what they did.
Oh, in football.
Basketball.
Who got clotheslined playing basketball?
The NBA Finals, remember? Mikhail,
that's a hard
Rambis.
foul. They need to bring that back. Hard foul.
Well, my point is that, certain eras just have certain things
now.
part of them. Well, everything's a cheap foul now. You barely touch the guy's elbow. Foul call.
Well, I mean, he barrels through Fosse to score the game-winning run in the 12th inning of the All-Star game. That just shows you what the All-Star game meant to these guys back then. Like, did you get that vibe last night? That the All-Star vibe was win or else?
No, the vibe last night was how we're having a good time. We're all buddies.
Is that okay, though? I mean, you don't want the game to count. I'm okay with the game counting. I'd rather have the game. I'd rather sit and say I'm watching the game that matters than watching what I watched last night, people in their pajamas.
Well, my problem was the pajamas. The rest of the game was fine. I also love that they had, Tatis. He was all queued up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Get him on the mic, and then Vlad Jr. hits the home run. Like, hey, say something when he comes around the bases, but he says it in Spanish, so you have to translate on the bottom. By the way, how about that situation where it's like you're in the middle of a game, and the guy's on the field, and you saw they had the split screen. So Fernando Tatis on the bottom, he's mic'd up. Vlad hits the home run, just throws his hands on his head, looks over his head, and watches it go. It's just like, oh my. 468 feet, by the way.
Pete Rose played in 1970, by the way, in the All-Star game. That I just want to reinforce people who think that they're not old. You're old, because I'm old. I'm 44, and I saw Pete Rose play in like 1986, and I was like, this guy's old. Pete Rose was like in his 40s when I was growing up.
Yeah.
He still looks the same. Bad hairdo, horrible hair dye. You know, you remember the what was that? The name of the show that ESPN did? That was like the Pete Rose thing about him gambling. What was that called? Remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I'm looking it up. Really 30 for 30.
It wasn't a 30 for 30. It was like a series. Tom Sizemore was the actor that played Pete Rose.
Oh, you're talking about something completely different. Then.
Yeah, it wasn't a 30 for 30. It was like a series.
Like a CBS or something?
No, it was on ESPN. I mean, remember ESPN did the show about the football, and that they got thrown out. They're like, you're not doing the show anymore.
Right.
Yeah. There was one they did on Pete Rose like that. Tom Sizemore was the actor. He says, I ain't watching a game unless I got something riding on it. That was my favorite line of the entire series.
Hustle. Hustle.
Yes, that's what it was called. Hustle. Well, Tom Sizemore in there had just a great rendition of the Pete Rose hairdo. Like they found the perfect actor. It looked like Chip Carey in Dumb and Dumber. That hairdo. You're not vibing with what I'm saying on that?
Well, I'm trying to find a picture of it right now.
Sizemore?
Of Sizemore as Pete Rose.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, you got to bring it up.
I'm trying to find it here.
Sizemore as Pete Rose is hilarious. So he has
here it is. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's floppy. I don't know if you can see it from there, but it's floppy.
Yeah, Hustle was the name of it.
Good job by them.
Tom Sizemore was the actor who played. If Pete Thompson was listening right now, he'd be saying, "Great job, Gil, on pulling Tom Sizemore out."
He'd be very proud of you.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
This would be his proudest moment of you.
I would agree that I pulled Tom Sizemore out. All right, what else happened? 1985, the Baltimore Stars beat the Oakland Invaders 28-24 in the USFL championship game at Giants Stadium. It's the second straight championship for the Stars. They were coached by Jim Mora. Now, the USFL, think about that. It happened on this day. So they would have the day after the All-Star game.
Hey, man. Those are good times, right?
I think so. I don't know. I'm not quite old enough to remember USFL games. Like 85, I don't really remember USFL games, to be honest with you. I don't think I ever watched a USFL game when I was 8.
I would have.
You probably would have, but I
then
did
it
not.
also makes me
But
mean.
like, I don't remember growing up with the spring football league. But like, I like the idea of the spring football, but like then the XFL comes on and I'm just not interested. But the USFL had legit players. They competed. They got Herschel Walker and Steve Young and Jim Kelly.
They had superstars.
They had high-level players mixed in with XFL players. That's the problem. Like, not the problem, but like if a new league came in and said, come play in our league, all these leagues are telling you from the get-go that they're not there to compete with the NFL.
And
that's the difference.
And don't forget, they also had the option where the NFL was only letting guys in after a certain number of years in college.
Back then.
The USFL was saying, come on in, we'll let you in early. And that was
Correct.
another clincher.
That's a good point. Like Herschel Walker went to the USFL after his junior year. He couldn't go to the NFL. It forced the NFL to change their rule. But like I always said, like if the XFL said to Trevor Lawrence when he was a freshman, do you want to come play in our league? That would make the spring football leagues more viable. But these leagues have all said we don't want to compete with the NFL. That's why I don't think a spring league will work like the USFL could have worked.
No, that was a once-in-a-lifetime thing that'll never happen again. It's a shame.
It is a shame. Somebody ruined it. I don't wonder who that was.
The guy with some bad hair.
Talk about bad hair. Yes, the guy with bad hair, and it wasn't Pete Rose.
Exactly. It wasn't Tom Sizemore.
2004, the Suns re-signed Steve Nash. The point guard played his first 2 years in Phoenix, then spent 98 to 2004 with the Mavericks. Then he went back to the Suns. Then he became the MVP, 2005 and 2006. Like, his first incarnation with the Suns, he was not an MVP player. I don't even remember him playing in Dallas, barely.
He didn't become who he was until the last couple of years in Dallas.
He became when D'Antoni took over, when he got paired up with Mike D'Antoni.
Well, so in Dallas, don't forget, when Donnie Nelson got to Dallas, that's when they started that offense with Dirk Nowitzki and Steve Nash. Then Phoenix got him. He got paired with D'Antoni and became a league MVP.
Right. When he went back to Phoenix, Mike D'Antoni was the coach, and that's really when he took off. But no one would ever have said when he was in Dallas or Phoenix the first time, man, this is an MVP-level player.
Absolutely not. And that's part of the reason why he got shipped out of Phoenix in the first place was because if you remember back to the late 90s, Phoenix went through like a cavalcade of guys at the end of Kevin Johnson's career. They had Jason Kidd for a while. They had Stephon Marbury. They were trying to find a guy, and then they eventually got Steve Nash back. And then it worked out pretty good.
They didn't think they were getting that guy.
No. Especially because they gave up on Jason Kidd. The whole thing was we gave up Jason Kidd. They were hoping Stephon Marbury would be something. And then Starbury wasn't anything.
Well, they traded Kidd to the Nets.
Right, and that's how they got Starbury.
And that's how the Nets went to the finals.
Right, so they were like, oh, man, we gave up Jason Kidd. So then they get Steve Nash, and they're like, this is better than we expected.
1967, Astro Eddie Matthews hits his 500th homer off Juan Marichal. And also on this day, 1 year later, Hank Aaron hits his 500th homer off Mike McCormick of the Giants.
Wow, talk about two guys on one day. That's a pretty good deal.
Which is normally a day that nothing's going on, the day after the All-Star game.
Schedule's different back then, I guess.
Well, there's a lot of All-Star games. 1970, on this day, the All-Star game at Riverfront Stadium, Pete Rose ran over Ray Fosse.
That's right.
Carl Yastrzemski was the MVP of that game, by the way.
Yes.
Billy Martin is the first manager in 1974 to be ejected by an umpire 2 games in one day. He got thrown out of 2 games of a double disco.
That does surprise me one bit. If you were going to ask me, name me a manager who got thrown out of both games of doubleheader, Billy Martin would be the first guy I came to mind.
Earl Weaver,
Lou Piniella.
Billy Martin.
It was like the big three. The big three volatile.
Who was the guy with the Hal McRae, the Royals manager that flipped out that one day? But I don't think it was on an umpire. I think it was on a reporter.
Yeah, it was on a reporter, I think. I can't remember his name.
Umpire Doug Harvey in 1978 ejects Don Sutton from a game after discovering 3 scuffed baseballs. So cheating's been going on for some time.
Spitballs. Don't forget those. Gaylord Perry.
1987, the All-Star Game, MVP Tim Raines. The best part about this is the picture of Tim Raines. He's wearing a Atlantic League uniform in the photo they have of him here.
Really?
The Nashua Pride or something. Is that what they're called? The Nantucket Nectars?
Nantucket Nectars,
I don't
yes.
think that's what they were called. That's the drink.
Oh, whatever. I really thought that was the name.
1987, the Rookie of the Year award is renamed to honor Jackie Robinson. 1988, Mike Schmidt passes Mickey Mantle with his 537th home run to move him into 7th place all time.
Mike Schmidt will be making an appearance in my Top 10 Thursday article tomorrow.
What would the category be?
So tomorrow's category, I'll give you guys a little sneak preview, is Top 10 Phillies All-Star selections.
It's got to be number 1 or 2.
Yeah, he's up there.
All right. 92 MVP All-Star Game, Ken Griffey Jr. at Jack Murphy Stadium. 1995, Ramon Martinez, who was the brother of
Pedro Martinez.
Pedro, the older brother,
right,
threw a no-hitter against the Marlins, beat him 7-0.
What year was that?
95.
95, okay. I think that was either right before or right around Pedro got traded to the Expos.
96, Yankees closer John Wetland. This is pre-Mariano Rivera.
Yes.
Set the Major League record with 24 consecutive saves.
Wow.
How about this? 96. First time ever on this day, the Yankees swept the complete season series in Baltimore for the first time ever. They won every game in Baltimore.
First time ever?
Ever.
Wow, that's hard to believe. That's amazing.
Pretty unbelievable when you think about it. I mean, those 96 Baltimore teams, they have Mussina. They were pretty decent.
They had Mussina, yeah. Cal Ripken Jr. They had, I think Roberto Alomar was on the team at that point, or was he still in Cleveland? I'm trying to remember exactly.
2019, this day, Novak Djokovic wins the longest ever Wimbledon final over Roger Federer, 4 hours and 57 minutes, 7-6, 1-6, 7-6, 4-6, 13-12.
I remember that very well because I just kept, I was watching it and I'm thinking, I can't believe these guys are still going.
Like
just
dark
don't
out.
quit.
Ben Simmons has quit.
Roger Federer has
Ben
pulled out of Roger Federer's pulled out of the Olympics too. With the
I did see that. And there's no fans at the Olympics, so I pull out too.
Yeah, although
Apparently they're having a bad COVID outbreak over there.
yeah, apparently they're like the one country right now that's still having like major COVID problems. It's like, okay, you're the one country, you happen to have the Olympics. What are the odds of that?
This hour brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets and take your profit. Find out how it's PropSwap.com or download the PropSwap app today. All right, 10 till the top of the hour, Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. I'm Mike Gill, at Mike Gill Show on Twitter. We appreciate everybody who is a part of the show out there listening on the radio, watching the show live on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. Coming up in the 5 o'clock hour, Jeff Kerr is back to talk a little NFL as we're getting closer to the start of training camp. Some teams are going to start next week. Over at 973 ESPN, would you trade Ben Simmons to the Kings for Buddy Hield, Marvin Bagley III, and multiple first-round picks? So far, 66% say no, 33% say yes. And Ryan from Jersey checks in and says, I would trade him to the Kings for De'Aaron Fox and multiple first-round picks. Guess what? The Kings will not do that. Reportedly, anyway. They're not interested in trading De'Aaron Fox. That, according to the Sacramento Bee. For more details, go to our website, 973ESPN.com, as the trade season is going to start to pick up. The trade rumors are going to start to pick up, and one of the names you're going to hear a lot is Ben Simmons, of course. And Ben Simmons' trade value, much to the dismay of many out there, is a lot higher than a lot of people thought it would be. According to Jason Alexander of the Sacramento Bee, the Kings are interested in the idea of acquiring Ben Simmons. Why? Now, why would anybody want Ben Simmons? Well, they're one of the worst defensive teams in the league. That's why. And they like the idea of acquiring Ben Simmons, but they are unlikely to include De'Aaron Fox as part of that deal. Now, the Sixers reportedly have been vocal about wanting to not trade Ben Simmons, but if they would trade Ben Simmons, getting back a all-star caliber player in return. He is a 3-time all-star, but he had a pretty bad finish to this season. So who is he? Is he the all-star player, the defensive player of the year, runner-up, first-team All-NBA defender, or is he this other guy who absolutely shrunk, I guess would be the word. He shrunk in the NBA playoffs against the Atlanta Hawks. Now, De'Aaron Fox is interesting. Mike McGarry said earlier he would not make the deal for Fox because he said he really hasn't played any big games. He's in Sacramento. Is he going to be able to close out games? He averaged 25.7 assists, 3.5 rebounds, and 1.5 steal per game for the Kings. Look, Simmons, for Sacramento, they were the 30th ranked defensive team in the league. They're wretched defensively. They want a player that will change their defense. It's the same reason why a team like Portland would take a shot. Why would Portland want Ben Simmons? Many would ask. They're horrible defensively. You're playing out west. You need someone that can defend. Portland doesn't have anybody. Sacramento doesn't have anybody. They also need a box office guy. They need someone to go there that they couldn't get in any other capacity. Now, I want to keep this in mind, too. According to our guy, Jake Fisher, over at Bleacher Report, NBA league insiders expect a flurry of sign and trades this summer. That's one way that Daryl Morey is going to have to use to get this team better. A sign and trade, because they're capped out. But one player that they could possibly be in on, I should say, when it comes to a sign and trade, it would be Kyle Lowry, who's having ongoing conversations. Keep in mind, Lowry was a player for the Houston Rockets. Morey was, the GM of that team. So Morey likes Lowry, knows him well. There's a lot of talk that teams around the league have a lot of interest in Danny Green as a veteran player who can kind of help younger players out. Could he be a piece in a sign and trade type of deal? Well, you'd have to sign Danny Green first, but you can sign Danny Green to more money because he's on your current team. There's a lot of wonky ways that they could try to do a sign and trade situation here. But keep in mind, Daryl Morey was the guy that traded Josh Richardson for Seth Curry and got Al Horford for Danny Green. So could he do something like this again, but get Kyle Lowry? We'll dive into that more. I want your text messages on the other side. 609 403 0973. 609 403 0973. A lot of votes already over on this question. Ben Simmons to the Kings. Would you do it? Vote now. All right, 5 o'clock hour here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. The show's flying today. I enjoy the fast shows. You guys help make that happen. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Got a poll question up for you at 973ESPN.com. I'm interested to see just how bad you want to trade Ben Simmons. So would a trade of Ben Simmons to the Kings for Buddy Hield, Marvin Bagley III, and multiple first picks push your pile? 57% say no. 42% say, yeah, I'll do it. That trade, apparently, according to the Sacramento Bee, their reporting, not mine, is not on the table. Well, it is on the table, possibly, from the Kings to the Sixers. The Sixers are saying, you're going to need to do better than that. We want De'Aaron Fox, and the Kings are balking at that, saying, no, that's not going to happen. So I don't know that this is a deal, but I think what it does indicate is that Simmons has a lot of interest out there. For all the people, and look, if you're not a Ben Simmons fan, you should like this. You should say, fine, he's getting a lot of interest. You should be happy about that. There are people out there that I know people who don't like Simmons, and then they want him to be gone. They're also pissed that he has a lot of interest. Like, what sense does that make? Well, I don't like the guy. He shouldn't have a lot of interest. Like, people like Ben Simmons. There's teams around the league that are going to like him. Elliot is watching the show on YouTube. He says Simmons for Halliburton and Hield would be tempting. Yeah, I think the Sixers said they do have some interest in, or the report says the Sixers have some interest in Tyrese Halliburton, who was third, I think, in the Rookie of the Year balloting, first team All-NBA rookie team, which doesn't really matter, 13 points a game, shoots the three okay. Nice player, definitely a nice player. I can't have him be the lead piece in a trade for Ben Simmons. So just think about this. As much as you don't like Ben Simmons, you're giving up a player who's third team All-NBA. That means what? Okay? Do the math for me. If you're third team All-NBA, what does that make you? As much as it pains you to answer this question, if I say you are third team All-NBA, what does that mean? Josh, do you know the answer to the question? If you are third team All-NBA, that makes you what? Right, no, I mean, in a simplistic form here, if I said you are third team All-NBA, that would make you a top 15 player in the league. Yes. There's only 15 players that get named to the All-NBA teams. First team, second team, third team. That means there's 15 guys in the league. 15 that are named All-NBA. Ben Simmons was one of them. So you can't just trade him for Tyrese Halliburton. You might as well go out to dinner and have halibut if you make that trade. That's a terrible trade. Yeah, you might think in your mind, but a business decision has to be made here. I can't trade Ben Simmons for Buddy Hield. Are you kidding me? Buddy Hield is essentially a better version of what you have in Seth Curry. They both do the same thing. Can't make that trade. You can't do a trade for Buddy Hield and Marvin Bagley. It would be ridiculous. Just think about that. Take a step outside of your hate for 1 second. All right? You hate the guy. I get it. You want him gone. You should see the post on social media about it that we posted this up on our website, on our Facebook page, and some of the responses there. It's just unbelievable. I got to pull up the one this guy wrote, and it's like, you wonder sometimes if people actually read the article. And I know the answer to the question. No, you don't. But, okay, so the link is shared on Facebook. Report, Sixers have interest in 2 Kings players for Simmons. So Michael Raggins, he obviously read the article because he wrote this. Bagley, Hield, and a pick. I am down. 2 players who can shoot and handle the rock for 1 player who cannot do either. Let's go. Well, first off, Ben Simmons can handle the rock. All right, let's get that out there. He is a very good ball handler. He has a very good handle. Does he shoot the rock? No. Two players who can shoot and handle the rock. Hield does not handle great, and Bagley doesn't do anything great. So the reply to that is that's not the two players the Sixers are interested in. So, like, people just want Ben gone so bad that they're willing to to deliver him for anything. Text messages are coming in. Would you trade Ben Simmons for that deal to Sacramento for Buddy Hield and Marcus Bagley and Marvin Bagley, and 3 first-round picks is what was put into the report at the Sacramento Bee. 3 first-round picks. Sacramento stinks. You're going to get 3 good first-round picks. But now you're going back into that mode. This text message says, Mike, I would decline Bagley, Hield, and a first for Simmons. Instead of Bagley and a first, I would ask for Halliburton. A package of Hield and Halliburton for Simmons would tempt me. Sixers would have a revamped backcourt and a 3-headed offensive monster of Hield, Harrison, and Embiid. That's not getting it done. I mean, Buddy Hield, this is what I always think, okay? Even with, I hate to say this. Even Dame Lillard isn't good enough to get his team out of the first round. They lose in the first round how many straight years? So why are we're like incensed that Ben Simmons and the Sixers haven't been able to get out of the second round, but we want to trade for players who can't get their current teams out of the first round? Bradley Beal. And I'm not saying Beal stinks. I like Beal. He's a great player, but he hasn't got out of the first round ever. Dame Lillard. All right? Dame Lillard is a tremendous player. I'm not saying that he's not. But we're asking for a player who hasn't been able to get his team out of the first round. Why is that? Isn't that somewhat concerning? Like, Dame Lillard's a great player, but why can't his team? Yes, I understand they got to the conference finals a couple of years ago. But they have lost in the first round 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 5 times they have lost in the first round with Dame Lillard. Yeah, 5 times in 8 years they have lost in the first round. Does that not concern anybody? Now, those two guys are on a different level. Bradley Beal has never won a playoff series. Dame Lillard has lost 5 times in 8 tries in the first round. But those are 2 players I would make the trade for. Buddy Hield hasn't sniffed the playoffs. Hasn't come close. And we're ready to just say, yeah, I'll take Buddy Hield and Marcus Bagley. Marvin Bagley. I don't know. Is there a Marcus Bagley out there? I think there is. Marcus Bagley. There is a Marcus Bagley. Yeah. Marcus Bagley played at Arizona State. That's why. I think he's still playing at Arizona State, which is why I think he's more in my head, because Marvin Bagley never gets on the damn floor. He's always hurt. Marcus Bagley at least plays. By the way, they're brothers. There's the confusion for me. Marvin and Marcus are brothers. Marvin plays for the Kings. Marcus goes to Arizona State. And I liked Marvin coming out of Duke. 6'11", I thought he would be a really good player. And the problem is he's been hurt. I think Marvin could use a change of scenery. He wants out of Sacramento. Doesn't shoot it all that well. For his size, he's not a great rebounder. I would be mixed on him. Hield I like, but I just feel Hield is the good player on the bad team. Don't you? Isn't that what Hield is? He's the good player on the bad team. That's what I feel about Buddy Hield. So now Sixer fans have come to the point where they want the good player on the bad team. He's 28 years old. He hasn't come close to a playoff. Not close. So do we want to go down the road? By the way, his three-point shot has declined almost every single year that he's been in the league. Last year, he went from 20 points to 19. He's down to 16. Do we really want Buddy Hield? I think I'm out on the Buddy Hield, Marvin Bagley altogether. I have no interest in it. We have votes coming in on that at 973 ESPN. 58% say no. 42% say yes. I mean, 42% to me sounds like people are just, I don't care. I just want Ben Simmons out. Over on Twitter, Morton checks in. He says, if I'm the Sixers, yes. Don't need picks. Expand the deal. Reroute Kings picks and a sign and trade Danny Green and Bagley to Toronto for Kyle Lowry. Now, that's changing the deal altogether. Now you've really changed the deal. I like the way you're thinking there, Mort, but you're now doing a lot of rerouting things here. You've got Danny Green in a sign and trade. You got Bagley going to Toronto. Then you got another sign and trade of Lowry, which would give you Lowry, Curry, Hield, Harrison, and Embiid. Now, that's a team that would be interesting. I still think you got a lot of moving parts there, Mort. I do appreciate the thought, though. I like that type of engagement that brings that into the mix. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Tom in the Villa says, I just hope whoever they get for Ben can come in and mesh well with both Embiid and the offense we run. Otherwise, it's a wasted trade. Well, here's the problem. I don't think it's meshing with the offense you run. I think it's the defense. The Sixers are who they are because of their defense. When Ben Simmons is no longer here, have a good time trying to figure out what to do with the Trae Youngs and the offensive players that Ben Simmons usually gets matched up with. Because instead of them, Trae Young had some good games against Ben. I'm not saying he didn't. But the night that Ben didn't really defend him, he blitzed you. After that, he just destroyed you. I mean, Mike, trading Simmons for Hield and Bagley is like replacing you with Josh. One garbage situation for another. I guess. I mean, it's beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Some people like Josh. Some people don't. Some people like me. Some people don't. We're not for everybody. No one's forcing you to listen, nor are they forcing you to text. I mean, what does that say about you? Yeah. Sorry. Had to be said. Mike, yeah, but these teams are led by Dame and Beal and guys of that nature don't have a guy like Embiid besides them. Put Hield with Embiid, and that's dangerous. That's fair, but Dame is supposed to be the Embiid. He's got C.J. McCollum, who's been an all-star. Beal has John Wall. He had John Wall. He had Russell Westbrook, who the last time I checked has been the MVP of the league. Russell Westbrook was the MVP of the league, and they can't win a playoff round. The Sixers don't have a guy who's been the MVP of the league. Washington has Buddy Hield and a guy who's been the MVP of the league. So Buddy Hield, Bradley Beal has played with all-star players, John Wall and an MVP in Westbrook, and he can't win. Dame Lillard has played with an all-star in C.J. McCollum. The rest of his cast, I would say, is not Bush League. They're not bums. But you're right. 1,000% agree with what you're saying. They are playing. Dame Lillard has played with less. Cole from LBI says, Mort sounded like Daryl Morey with a burner account. Cole, the last thing we need is another burner account running the Philadelphia 76ers. So I agree with what you're saying that, yes, it has been that trade thing was a total, mix match and parts going all over the place. But we don't need any more burner accounts. Let me update the poll question. It keeps updating pretty quickly here. No is leading 59% to yes, 41%. You can vote now at 973 ESPN. Let's get some of the tweets in here as well at 973 ESPN. A couple tweets on that particular question. Thea says, I wouldn't, but pushed Yes, by accident. I'd like us to keep Ben. So, all right, you voted yes, but you're saying you would not do the deal. I like the fact that you put that out there. Jalen Hurts, not Jalen Hurts, Jalen Hurts, QB 1 season at Band King Jolly tweets. Harrison Barnes, Marvin Bagley, Buddy Hield, and 3 first-round picks. What the hell would I want Harrison Barnes for? Jalen Hurts, come on. You got to be better than that. I don't want Buddy Hield. I'm kind of out on Buddy Hield. Like, the whole Buddy Hield thing, I think, is hit the expiration date. I would have done Buddy Hield for last season for Al Horford when we heard that thing. But they ended up getting Danny Green for Horford. They ended up getting Curry for Richardson. So I don't need Buddy Hield. Buddy Hield, to me, you're just, I'm out on that. All right. Let's see. We still have Thibault, and he's only going to improve. While he isn't Simmons, he's no slouch on defense. You can actually make an argument that Thibault is almost a better on-ball defender than Simmons. The only problem with that is he can't defend as many players as Simmons can. Simmons can defend multiple positions. Thibault is more limited in that. He's not defending centers. He's going to have a tougher time with point guards like that. But yeah, Thibault can play. But what makes this team unique is that they have both of them. That's why, and plus Embiid. More text messages coming in. I appreciate all the text. 609-403-0973. Bagley and Hield are never going to be leading players on contenders. Neither play a lick of defense. Seth Curry and Hield backcourt horrendous as well. Defensively, horrible. There's another thing you got to keep in mind. What happened to Curry in the playoffs? He got picked on left and right? He got picked on left and right in the playoffs. So you cannot play Seth Curry in the backcourt with another poor defensive player. There's another problem with this whole situation, right? That's a tough situation. What are you supposed to do? We complained about Curry, that Curry couldn't defend. And now you want to play him in the backcourt with another defender who can't defend. That's something you have to keep into consideration, too. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Keep your text messages coming. Keep your comments on the video stream coming. Elliot says, just wanting Ben gone for the sake of wanting him gone is a flawed mindset. He says, here's the thing, Mike. We can discuss all these trades that make us better, but the only one that puts us over the top is Dame. I would almost agree with you there. I mean, Dame Lillard and Joel Embiid, I think, is one that probably I ask the question a lot. If you're trading Ben Simmons, does that make you better or make you different? And I think most of the answers to these questions is it makes you different. Most of the answers to these questions, to all these trades, are you better without Ben Simmons with these trades, or are you different? I think you're just different. You're not as good defensively. You probably score a little bit more. But if you're not as good defensively, do you score enough? I'm not sure. I think the Sixers' biggest concern or upgrade needs to come in the way of finding a better number 2 scorer. They've got to find a better number 2 guy. Curry essentially became the number 2 guy in the playoffs at times. Can't have that. He's got to go back to the role of catch and shoot, 3-ball bang. Harris with his role, mid-range jumpers, he's a third guy. They need to find a number 2 guy. You can be concerned about Simmons scoring. The problem is you needed Simmons to score because you didn't get consistently enough from Harris. Right? More stuff. More text, I should say. A couple more. Gill, all caps. Yo! You need the right pieces around your star players to win. If Ben does not fit, do not waste Embiid's prime. Get the right pieces for Ben and move on. I like Sexton. That's from Joey D. in Ventnor City. Says, sorry, been on daddy duty. Well, congratulations. Mazel tov, my man. You do need the right pieces around your star player. That's why I think Embiid needs a player like Ben's defense so that he doesn't have to do as much in the painted area. As much as we hate to hear that, I know we don't, as a society, like defense, but defense is a huge factor. Think about the Golden State Warriors. What was underrated about that team? Their defense was really good. As well as they played offensively, they weren't great offensively every single night. They were good some nights, but their defense helped them. Mike, I would go back to Indiana, offer Simmons for Brogdon and LeVert. That's not happening. Get out of here with that. You're going to trade again. You're talking about a player who is a top 15 player in the league. Not voted by me, voted by his peers. He was third team All-NBA. That means he's a top 15 player in the league. I like Karis LeVert. I like Brogdon. They're not even in that conversation. If they had an All-NBA 10th team, those guys aren't on it. Nick says, I just want him to learn how to shoot the ball. I think we're all there, Nick. I don't even think he just needs to learn to shoot the ball. He needs to be more aggressive and learn how to shoot free throws or be more confident. Mike, without Simmons, the three-point shooters become less effective, led the league in assists on three-point shots. Well, the Simmons, the three-point shooter thing, that's very good point. He is number one in the league since he entered the league on assisted three-pointers, and then he has not played with very good three-point shooters. Keep that in mind. Number one in the league on assisted three-point shots. You're going to lose that. And then Seth Curry's not nearly as good. And all these other guys that make open threes, they're not nearly as good. That's what I've said before. It's not about Ben. It's about what the other players are because of Ben. I'll update the poll question one more time before we take a quick timeout. 609-403-0973. A lot of reaction to this one. 61% say no. 61% are sane. 38% are insane in the membrane. Insane in the brain. Mike, if you trade Ben for anyone less than Ingram, Philly lose. That's a terrible trade. Actually, it's not terrible. It's just, come on, you can do better than that. Ben Simmons for Luka and 3 firsts. Let's play hardball with these other teams. No, that's funny. This guy should have heard me before I lost 65 pounds. He says, hey, Gil, I didn't know what it meant to sound fat until I heard you on the radio. Well, I appreciate you listening. I like the people who think like insults. You're listening to me. What does that make you? All right. Wow. In your mind, you have listened to me. I have won. You listening to me makes me the winner. And you also took time out of your day to text me, you flipping loser. So yes, maybe my voice sounds like a fat person. And maybe that's the way I like it. So go bleep off, dude, and keep listening. Keep on texting, you loser. It must suck to be you who have to listen to me. Ha 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 ha. Hey, guess what I'm going to do today? I'm going to send a text message to a person on the radio that I don't like. Oh, what a great idea, Ralphie. And I'm not even going to be original by doing it. You sound like a fat person. Oh, that was great. Oh, that was so funny. You got that guy. Jesus. What kind of lives do these people live that you took the time out of your day to first push the button? You know how many choices you have on your radio dial? And you took the time to choose me. Doesn't that suck to hear? Doesn't it suck to hear that for you? That you made the choice. You have so many choices, and you picked me. That's got to stick in your craw. That's got to suck to be you. I'd hate to be you right now. I'd hate to be you. But you know what? I'd love to be me. I'm back with more Sports Bash. Thank you for listening. I actually have that guy's number. I should just start putting it out all over the place. But you know what? I'm not that kind of guy. 856-315-18. Sorry, I won't go any further. All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. All right, welcome back. Sports Bash live 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. And, of course, if you're watching the show live over at 97.3 ESPN on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, we got so much NFL conversation to get into. Jeff Kerr over at CBS Sports, he has this list up, right? The list of the top quarterback coach rankings over at CBSSports.com. Check that out. And we're going to kind of comb through that list as Jeff Kerr puts that out. And he joins me in just a couple of moments here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. This hour is brought to you by Matt Blatt Kia. The Matt Blatt Kia. They want to get you approved today. Matt Blatt Kia, 6211 Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township. So check out Jeff's piece, the quarterback head coach duos, the top ones in football. We're going to get through that list here in just a second. 5:32 on a Wednesday. All right, let's bring Jeff into the conversation now. That list is up right now. It is the main story on the home page over at CBS Sports. Who are the top 10 quarterback coach duos in 2021? Now, Jeff is here, and you can kind of tell everybody, Jeff, the criteria for this list. There's going to be certain duos that did not make your list.
Well, yeah, for example, I mean, from a local flavor, Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni just don't qualify. Sirianni's a first-year head coach, and Jalen Hurts is a first-year starting quarterback. They never played together, so obviously they're not going to count. But I use more of a Sean McVay or a Sean Payton type scenario because Sean McVay's got a new quarterback with Matthew Stafford. Now, Sean McVay is arguably a top 10 head coach in the league, but he's never coached Matthew Stafford in a regular season game. I suspect they'll likely be on this list next year, but going into 2021, they're just not eligible. Sean Payton's got a new quarterback. Same difference. Like, he's had Taysom Hill for 4 games, but we don't even know if Taysom Hill's going to be the starting quarterback. Right. So he was ineligible. So it was established starting quarterbacks and starting head coaches that they've been together at least a year.
All right, so that's the criteria there from Jeff. Let's take a look at the 10 on the list. So far, where has been the – all right, so let's do this. Let's look at the rankings from 10 down. Number 10, Jimmy Garoppolo, Kyle Shanahan. So I would imagine that one's getting a lot of traction.
Yeah, and honestly, if you look at the competition they would have faced, it makes sense to put them in there, and that's what I did. My finalists were for that 10th spot: Garoppolo, Shanahan, McCarthy, Prescott, Kingsbury, Murray, and Kirk Cousins, Mike Zimmer. Kirk Cousins, Mike Zimmer have not been to a Super Bowl. Kirk Cousins did not go to the NFC Championship game. Mike Zimmer has. So they didn't have the accomplishments Garoppolo and Shanahan had. They were the barometer, so they're out. McCarthy and Prescott. McCarthy obviously has a Super Bowl, but him and Dak Prescott have only been together 6 games. I don't think those 6 games are enough. And you could honestly say, and Will Brinson from CBS Sports pointed this out to me when I was on the Pick 6 podcast earlier today. Yeah, Dallas was this, but they could have easily been 0-4, 0-5 with those 2. And I said, that's a very good point. So, they were out. And then it came down to, well, what about Cliff Kingsbury, Kyler Murray? I love the 2 as a quarterback coach duo. I thought that I'd actually had them in this list this year. But they did not make the playoffs last year. The Cardinals faded down the stretch. Murray was really good. Kingsbury was controversial. Both of them combined have a losing record. I don't think that's a reflection on them per se. I just think they need more of a body of work. So Garoppolo and Shanahan, they got number 10 just based on what they did last year. They were only 3-3, but the 49ers are 3-7 without Garoppolo. And they were really good in 2019 when they made the Super Bowl. And making the Super Bowl is a big deal.
I was going to say, yeah, so if you're going back to what they did the year before, yeah, they had a very good run together. Garoppolo and Shanahan, number 10. Number 9, another interesting one, Baker Mayfield, Kevin Stefanski, only 1 year together.
Yeah, and they deserve to be on this list just based on – I looked at it this way, Mike. The Cleveland Browns never won 11 games since they were reinvented as a franchise in 1999. They never won a playoff game. since 1995. They did that. They haven't won a road playoff game since 1969. They did that against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Mayfield was tremendous in that game. Now, Stefanski didn't coach in that game, but Stefanski did get them there. We have to remember that. This Cleveland team was expected to win based on their point differential, 7.2 games. They won 11. Do the math. So, those two deserve to be in the top 10.
Let's take a look at the rest of this list. I'll tell you if I agree or not. Number 8, we've got Ben Roethlisberger, Mike Tomlin. Now, obviously, these two guys together have been fantastic. Ben Roethlisberger is going to be 39 years old. So this is obviously, well, not obviously, Ben could still have a good year. He had a good year last year, not his best, but Roethlisberger, Tomlin deserve to be on this list, I think.
Oh, absolutely. And one of my criteria was Super Bowls do count, and they have one together. And is this duo based on reputation? Yeah, it is. I mean, the Steelers have only been 3-6 in the playoffs since they went to the Super Bowl a couple years in 2011. They've been more known for their December and January collapses than anything else. But still, though, Tomlin has never had a losing season as a head coach, and he's been the head coach since 2007. He is tied for the most wins with Don Shula for head coaches through their first 14 seasons at 145. That's pretty impressive. And Ben Roethlisberger, we know what he can do. He threw for 5,000 yards in a season before. He has 2 Super Bowl rings, and the Steelers are good every year. And I don't see Ben Roethlisberger and Mike Tomlin just bottoming out and going 5-12 or 6-11 this year. I just don't see it. And this is based on more of 2020, but Ben Roethlisberger and Mike Tomlin, they were pretty good last year.
All right, number 7. Let's go now to the next one. Yes, I agree. This one's going to be interesting. Ryan Tannehill, Mike Vrabel. Tannehill, we talked about him the other day when we did the quarterback list in terms of I didn't think that he got enough respect, and here he is at number 7 on your list.
Yeah, this is where it got difficult because it goes, okay, where do we rank these next couple guys? And Tannehill and Vrabel, they've been to an AFC Championship game together. And the Titans have had an amazing offense since Mike Vrabel decided to bench Marcus Mariota and make Ryan Tannehill the starter. And Tennessee has benefited tremendously. They went to an AFC Championship game. Last year they were a really good football team. Derrick Henry had 2,000 yards rushing. And, Tannehill, the last 2 years, if you look at all the stats, he's pretty much a top 5 quarterback. He's been very good. He's among the league leaders in passer rating, 50-yard passes. Titans have had an amazing offense, and it's funny. I actually thought Tennessee was going to make a deeper playoff run than what they did last year. They ended up losing to Baltimore, so that's why they were only at number 7. It's a small sample size, but those two have done a lot in a year and a half together.
Yep, I think those. This one's going to be interesting because you're going to have Julio Jones now and A.J. Brown and, of course, the running game there. We'll see if Tannehill's numbers, 3,800 yards, 33 touchdowns, and just 7 interceptions last year. Number 6, Josh Allen, Sean McDermott. And, of course, Allen has been shooting up everybody's rankings.
Josh Allen's been tremendous. I mean, I put out a stat. I forgot what it was. I think he was like the only quarterback in NFL history to complete like 67% of his passes for 500 yards and throw for 35 plus touchdowns and run for 7 plus touchdowns in a season. That's just how good Josh Allen was. And you got to give Sean McDermott and Brian Dable credit for his development. And the Bills went to the AFC Championship game last year. They did not have a good run defense. Their defense wasn't as good as it was in years past. They had to rely on Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs to carry that offense. They had not have a good running game last year, and they still went 13-3. They went to the AFC Championship game. Josh Allen had a tremendous year. This could be the best year of his career, and I still think Josh Allen has a lot to do. I don't think this is a one-year wonder. I think those two are going to move up this list as we go forward.
It feels like it's trending in that direction anyway. All right, number 5, Lamar Jackson, John Harbaugh, obviously was a former MVP of the league.
Yeah, and this one was tough for me because Allen and McDermott beat them last year in the playoffs. And I said on the Pick 6 podcast too, I did not think Baltimore was going to beat Buffalo going into that playoff game. Winning in Buffalo in the playoffs is hard, and we haven't really known that because the Bills haven't really hosted home playoff games until last year. So the Bills, look, they're really good, but you can't deny what Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh have done in such a short period of time. Jackson is 30-7 as a starter. He is the quickest starting quarterback ever to reach 30 wins in terms of games played. That's incredible in and of itself. He has an MVP award, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. He kind of slipped from amazingly great to very good last year, and everybody thought he was on the decline. No, it was just he kind of backed into the median a little bit. And John Harbaugh, we know what he did. He has the most road playoff wins in NFL history with 8, has a Super Bowl. Yeah, him and Lamar Jackson together only have 1 playoff win, but that shouldn't be a deterrent toward what both of these two have done. John Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson definitely deserve to be in the top 5.
All right, number 4, we got Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll. This one's an easy one.
Yeah, this one was reputation and success. I mean, Seattle won 12 games for the first time in 5 years last year, and I know they bowed out in the wild card round. That's unfortunate for them, but I've said this before. I don't know if they lose to the Rams if Seattle has a full capacity of people at that game. They didn't have anybody in that home playoff loss last year, and Seattle did fade down the stretch, but Russell Wilson never had an MVP vote, still had his best year last year. 40 touchdown passes, just absolutely incredible through 9 years in Seattle. Has a Super Bowl, should have 2. Pete Carroll, same thing, has a Super Bowl, should have 2. Seattle is always at the top of the NFC West. It's hard to bet against Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll. Last year I had them at 3. This year they fell to 4. Still, though, that's still pretty high. I mean, those two are pretty much a guaranteed 10 wins.
All right, let's go to number 3, which is kind of interesting. Will they even be together? Aaron Rodgers, Matt LaFleur, number 3.
And, I said that to myself. Well, should I put these two together? Well, right now they are together. And the results are pretty good. 2 NFC Championship games, 26-6. Aaron Rodgers has won an MVP. And look, if I'm going to boast about Lamar Jackson's MVP, I got to boast about Aaron Rodgers' MVP. And in the 2 years he's had Matt LaFleur, 71 touchdown passes, 9 interceptions. And Aaron Rodgers had one of the greatest statistical seasons for a quarterback ever. And it doesn't get talked about enough because we take him for granted because he's Aaron Rodgers. And look, there have only been 2 teams that have reached the NFC that reached their conference championship game in each of the last 2 years: the Chiefs and the Packers. So number 3, it's based on their level of success. The Chiefs are the only team to win more games than the Packers in the last 2 years.
Yep, and let's stop with that real quick and get your thoughts as we're less than 2 weeks away from training camp. Aaron Rodgers going to be there, yay or nay?
I say yes, he'll be there.
Okay, all right. Very definitive on that. All right, let's go to number 2. Pat Mahomes, Andy Reid. All right, explain.
Well, Chiefs fans weren't as upset over this as I thought they'd be. I think because they know I'm a big Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid supporter. I definitely will. I'll say this of Andy Reid. I'll argue he's a better coach than Bill Belichick till the cows come home. So I thought this was fair for them. And, if we're looking at body of work, Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid should be number 1. I mean, look at what they've done 3 years ago. 3 conference championship games, a Super Bowl, an MVP, most wins in the league. Basically the dynamic duo. I don't think those two are going to be out of the top 2 anytime soon. That's just how good they've been together. And Mahomes just keeps getting better and better. I think Reid has been astonishing with Mahomes and what he's been able to do. Finally got a Super Bowl last year. I mean, really the only quarterback they have lost to in the postseason is Tom Brady. They are 6-2 in the postseason. Both losses are to Brady. And the last football game we saw play was Super Bowl 55, and we saw what happened. 54 or 55. I don't even remember what Super Bowl we're in anymore. The last game we saw was the Super Bowl, and they got destroyed. They got clobbered. So that's not their fault. Honestly, the offensive line of the Chiefs was decimated. The Chiefs were banged up. It played right in the Tampa Bay's pass rush, but still, though, it's hard to put them ahead of a certain duo that beat them that bad in the Super Bowl, and seems to be their only kryptonite, honestly.
And that's number 1. Tom Brady and Bruce Arians get to the top of the list for 2021 from Jeff Kerr over at CBS Sports.
And I'll say this, the reason I did it, 1 year, 1 championship. They are 1 for 1. I did not think Tom Brady and Bruce Arians were going to win the Super Bowl in year 1 together. I thought they'd go to the playoffs. I thought they'd be exciting the entire year. But man, those two were on another level in late November, really once the bye week hit in week 14. They came out of the bye week, and I know their schedule wasn't great. They played Atlanta twice. They played Detroit. But, man, they just rolled into the playoffs and beat Washington in a close game on the road, beat the New Orleans Saints, who, let's be fair, beat them twice in the regular season. I didn't think that was going to happen, but I thought, hey, you know what? After they won that game, I honestly thought they probably would win the Super Bowl or at least get there. They beat Green Bay in Lambeau, and then they win the Super Bowl in dominating fashion. And look, Brady's had a career year with Bruce Arians. Bruce Arians unlocked so much out of Tom Brady, and I think Bucs fans really know that too and appreciate it. I think last year showed how good of a coach Bruce Arians actually was, and Tampa Bay is loaded. And we saw when you give a good quarterback like Tom Brady weapons, not what he had in New England, what they're capable of. And I got to be honest with you, I wouldn't be surprised if they were number one after next year.
Yeah. Well, obviously, by the way, Tom Brady, Bill Belichick did not make your list the year before. So for Brady to go from off the list to back on at number one, that's something.
Well, they weren't even eligible. So because Brady was in Tampa. So, and Belichick, I didn't even know it was
his first year, right? This was before the year last year. Right. By the way,
funny.
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. This year, was the first year Bill Belichick was eligible for the list. And I'm like, man, I can't put him and Cam Newton on this.
No. By the way, last year, Mahomes and Reed were 1. Drew Brees, who's no longer in the league, with Peyton were 2. Russell was 3. He moved down to 4 this year. Lamar Jackson, you had at 4 last year with Harbaugh. Carson Wentz and Doug Peterson entered the year at number 5 last year. Jimmy Garoppolo and Shanahan were number 6 last year. Deshaun Watson, Bill O'Brien, my gosh, think about where those two guys are now. They were number 7 on your list. Roethlisberger, Tomlin, Jared Goff, and Sean McVay were number 9. They are now split up. And Rodgers LaFleur went from 10 all the way into number 3. So that was last year's list. Check out the full list right now over at CBS Sports at Jeff Kerr, CBS. And he, of course, was kind enough to join us here on a Wednesday edition of the Sports Bash. All right, Jeff, we will catch up again on Friday. Great list, man. Good fodder.
Hey, thanks, Mike. You know what? It was funny. When I was doing that list from this year to last year, I'm like, I can't believe I had this many changes, and I think we might be in store for that next year. I should expect this by now.
Yeah, there's a lot of new quarterbacks, young quarterbacks in the league, and we'll see which of those enter the list based on what they do in 2021. Thanks, Jeff.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me on, Mike.
All right, Jeff will be back on Friday. He'll be covering the Eagles this season. Training camp is almost here. We'll have all that. And, of course, when we come back, we'll wrap up the show. Game night tonight. It's a Weinberg Wednesday. Hopefully all of you are enjoying your day. It is the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. Hopefully you're enjoying this rest of your Wednesday. Back with the final segment of tonight's show. Get ready to wrap up the show on a Wednesday. Don't forget, tomorrow we will have Adam Kaplan back for football at 4 as we get another day closer to Eagles camp. Keith Smith will recap Game 4 of the NBA Finals for tonight. I think the Bucks win tonight, by the way.
Well, you've been pretty consistent saying that you think it's going to be 2-2 and there's going to be a best-of-3 series. So,
yep, I think Bucks win.
I tend to agree with your assessment, by the way.
What's that?
That the home team's going to win out the first 4 games, then we'll see who really is made of what after that.
Yeah, I think, man, I'm like Giannis right now. The way he's going, it's crazy.
I was telling Brian Toporek last night on game night that to me, it's like you don't really have a guy that you root against. Like there's no villain, there's no unlikable team or player. You love Giannis's story. You love Devin Booker.
That was a great conversation with Michael Lee today.
Yeah, up on the YouTube channel at 973 ESPN YouTube.
By the way, we had Michael Lee on today, and he said a lot of very interesting stuff. And this is one of the key things that we've kind of heard throughout the process here with Ben Simmons.
I think one of the main problems that the Sixers have had over the years is that Ben is has such a tight circle. He keeps everything, with his family and with his really, really close friends. So he's not really trying to get outside help when it comes to his game. And if he's not going to do that, then how is he ever going to grow? Somebody's got to get in his ear and say that. So far, nobody's been willing to do it. And I just don't think it's going to happen in Philadelphia.
The circle that he keeps is holding him back. We hear that a lot about some of these guys who have these issues.
Listen, when you're surrounded by enablers who always tell you what you want to hear, you're never going to grow.
More tonight on game night. Ben Simmons, possible deals, Sacramento, Dave Weinberg. I'm sure he'll have some interesting all-star game thoughts and conversation. That's tonight at 6:20 on game night. I'm back tomorrow. I appreciate each and every person who took the time to text me today and listen to the show. That is very nice of you. And we'll do it again tomorrow. Thanks to the people who watched us as well over at 97.3 ESPN.